fantastic. This is GT racing right now.
He's got traction, he's going around the outside of both of them. Maloney!
Oh, he's taken Anderson. Anderson's up to
Oh my God! Big crash. Oh my goodness, half the field's going to get rolled.
Second very close. These guys are want to make their way through the field very quickly. Oh, there we go. Oh no! That's massive. This is it. This is over. I can't believe this. Oh my God!
God, what?
You looking to stand out on track, give your sponsor some exposure or create an eye-catching look for your team? You can't go past Worm Paints for high-quality, custom paint schemes for the iRacing software. Whether it's a complete original look or even recreating your real-life paint scheme in-game, get in touch with Worm Paints today. Worm Paints, quality custom liveries.
Welcome to the most beautiful racetrack in Australia, Mount Panorama, and welcome to SimSpeed TV for Panorama Drivers Club 7. We've got 4 classes of racing action in a single driver endurance format today, and it's always very, very interesting. Last race a month ago was fantastic, fascinating, and with a sting in the tail. I'd like to welcome you once again. I'm David Haynes with you for the coverage. Also joining me, Lockie Mansell and Nick Scaraju. As per last round, great to have those guys back once again here on SimSpeed. Qualifying's underway right now before we then head towards our 2-hour, 20-minute race. I'll bring you in here, Lockie. This is a track I know you're very well familiar with, as are many, many Australian racing enthusiasts. How do you see today's race playing out with the 4 classes we've got?
Good afternoon to you, David. Good afternoon, everybody. Yeah, great to be back at the holy grail of Australian motorsport, Mount Panorama, Bathurst, for a bit of endurance racing action this afternoon. Of course, last month we were supposed to be at Bathurst in real life for the 6-hour production car race, but that didn't go ahead due to the cancellation of pretty much all real-life motorsport events for the time being. But don't despair, because we still get to go endurance racing in the virtual world, and very much looking forward to some good class battles within the 4 classes that we've got for this afternoon's race. The GT4 class, the TCR class, the American Muscle class for the Mustangs, and of course the Sport class for the MX-5s, and good fields in all 4 of those classes as well.
And Nick, Panorama Drivers Club's an interesting format of racing, not technically a championship, more a series of reoccurring events. We've got driver rankings based on the last couple of events, not an official point standing, as it were. Drivers have to sort of start in some of the lower classes, work their way up to the faster cars in later events, and definitely one that's geared to the gentleman driver, to the racing enthusiast, more than, I guess, the fiercest competitors.
Yeah, exactly, David. Thanks for having me. Rewards consistency, so people that come in every month. We've got in the GT4 class, Edward Foster at 60 points, absolutely dominating, more than double the rest of the field. Same alongside TC1 with Jason Markowski as well. TCR is a little bit closer, and same with American Muscle. And the sport class is at the moment the most hotly contested one, with the top 4 only separated by just over 10 points. So yeah, really rewarding consistency.
Yeah, and those classes were originally 5 of them. The popularity of the TCR car has I think all but sunk the Kia Optima TC1 class. No competitors from that class today. And probably not a giant loss. It's replaced by a far more popular, maybe more accessible front-wheel drive touring car in the Audi RS3 LMS. Our fastest class is GT4, the Porsche Cayman. And then these TCR cars, like we mentioned, they've got a fair bit in hand then over the American muscle class made up of the Ford Mustang FR 500S. And then now entry level, very popular, very accessible, is the Mazda MX-5 Global Cup car. That's one that iRacing drivers are very, very familiar with indeed. So we are looking at qualifying right now. Each driver gets one lap in this session. Cameron Stubber driving one of those Porsche Cayman GT4 cars. Looks like he's definitely attacking the lap, Lockie.
Heading down into the chase at the moment aboard the Porsche Cayman GT4, and he was one of the first drivers out on track to commence a flying lap. So we'll watch Cameron Stubber as he comes into Murray's corner in the number 9 car. Let's have a look at the lap time as he comes across the line. And actually, we have to wait a bit longer than what I'm used to because the finish line's a bit further along pit straight, but he goes to P1 with the 2 minutes 16.9. One of the interesting things, and we were talking about it just before we came on air, David, the fact that there's been a weight reduction for the TCR Audi RS3 LMSs for this round, and we are therefore expecting them to be very, very closely matched in terms of performance with the GT4 cars. So it should actually be a pretty good battle between each of those two classes.
Yeah, certainly. Another thing we were talking about was the tyre temperature. Cold tyres for the GT4 and TCR cars is very difficult to manage in their own respective ways between the rear-wheel drive and the front-wheel drive car, but cold tyres, definitely something to manage. And Nick, I imagine that makes a single lap qualifying a bit of a challenge in those classes, potentially, getting those tyres in the window you want after just one outlap straight into your single flying lap.
Yeah, exactly. And the same with Bathurst as well. You have a very, very tight, it's a very tight track, very easy to get an off track. You've got to be really careful and not only get a fast lap in, but as well as a clean lap.
Exactly. On iRacing, even scraping the wall is an incident point and would make your qualifying lap not valid. So maybe in the real world, you could sometimes get away with scraping the wall here or there, maybe losing a mirror on your qualifying lap. Can't do that on iRacing. It's got to be perfectly clean for your lap to be a valid qualifying lap. And with only one lap, you absolutely need to make sure that one's clean. So we're looking at Hugh McLaughlin here, another beautifully presented Cayman GT4 as he goes through the section where I think the TCR cars are going to be strongest compared to a Cayman.
Yeah, I mean, even though we talk about the lap times being quite similar between the TCR cars and the GT4 cars, they will still have different strengths and weaknesses in different parts of the racetrack. So TCR cars being quite light and nimble will be very good across the top of the mountain. The Cayman will have a little bit more poke in a straight line to help it haul itself up Mountain Straight and then drive down Conrod Straight. So Cayman will be the fastest car in a straight line here this afternoon.
Certainly the case as McLaughlin's about to come to the end to finish this lap here. 6 cars in that GT4 class today. Cameron Stubber, we saw, he's right at the top. Paul Nichols is going to be second in class. What about Hugh McLaughlin as he comes across the line? Seems relatively... I'm not seeing that a lap went in there. So we were just talking about how you've got to keep it clean if you want your lap to be valid. And I think somewhere, you might have missed it, Hugh McLaughlin had a drama with that one, Nick.
Yeah, he's really going to struggle to get another outlap. We've only got 1:40 left on the clock, so yeah, it looks like he'll be starting from the back of the Porsche pack.
One of the challenges here at Mount Panorama is because it is such a long lap, and in this case it is such a short qualifying session, only 10 minutes, it doesn't give you a whole lot of laps that you get to complete over the course of the session. So if you don't bank a lap, it can really hurt you. And just having a look at the timing now, there are a lot of cars that have not recorded a lap time so far in this session, and we've only got just over 60 seconds remaining on the clock. So some of those drivers yet to record a lap are only really going to get one final chance at it.
Yeah, indeed. It's a 10-minute session as well, but note that you're only given one flying lap, only one lap allowed. So again, that puts the pressure on that one single lap, and this is a place that's difficult when you are under pressure. You see Dave Oliver there in the American Muscle class goes across the line. He'll be 6th in class. Currently, it's Aiden Luthwaite at the top of that class. So the time is very close to expiring. Safety cars going to be a possibility today, Lockie. We saw some last round. Do you imagine we might see one again?
Well, it's Bathurst, isn't it? So it's always a possibility at this circuit, particularly if you get an incident up somewhere at the top of the mountain and through the dipper or the S's, where you can get some damage and you can get cars awkwardly parked sideways across the circuit. So one of the other interesting things, of course, will be strategy. So we know that it's a 2-hour and 20-minute race. Last round, pretty much everybody got through with just a single pit stop unless they had to make an unscheduled stop for damage. But certainly it was just the single pit stop for the teams or the drivers that had trouble-free runs. So it'll be interesting to see how strategy plays out today as well.
Well, qualifying is done. We're getting ready for race start in Panorama Drivers Club PDC7. The drivers, the cars are filing up behind the pace car, getting ready for this race start. We're going to take a look at the grid, starting with the GT4 class. Cameron Stubber with pole position there. He's going to be starting alongside Paul Nichols. Right behind them is Ken Kropp and Hugh McLaughlin. Got Peter Kropp in 5th and Edward Foster, man we mentioned, the top of the rankings, starting in 6th in that class. Nick, maybe you have your eyes on the TCR class.
Yeah, so in TCR, we've got James Foster leading to James Ruwal, Stephen Griemer to Parry Anastakis, Peter Hunter to Adam Neal, Peter Madison to Chris Polly. The rest didn't, and then we've got the rest filing in behind that didn't manage to register a time. So we've got, here we go, Scott Chambers to Alex Purley, Cole Stevens, Shane Witt, Ira Felberg, Grant Matterford, and Lachlan Cujo.
Indeed, so the TCR class, the most popular and most populous behind them is American Muscle. Said Aiden Luthwaite on pole in that class. He's got Michael Skurlock for company there. Then Peter Dodd, Daniel Stevens, Jonathan Bain, Dave Oliver. We saw a little bit of his qualifying in the Synergy Sim Racing Mustang. Justin Cotterill, Bruce Ross, and Carl Ruvolt joining him in that class. For the sport class, I imagine, Lockie, you'll be able to look there.
So Simon Mazzono, quickest out of those cars, ahead of Josh Cavarello, Jake Oliver, Luke Camey, Michael Plonis, Cameron Dance, Josh Maynard, and Andre Cortigs ahead of David Johnson, and then David Harris completing our grid.
Pace car is rolling. Headlights are on all of our race cars because it is a beautiful sunrise at Mount Panorama. A fantastic time of the day to go racing for some multi-class endurance racing. Pace car's about to pull in. Field will be led to the green flag for 2 hours 20 minutes by Cameron Stubber. There's our 6 cars in our fastest class around the final corner. And looks like green flag out. We are racing. Clean start there, but they're going to need to be careful with the cold tyres, cold track. TCR behind them is where some of the action is going to be today. They're away and racing and nearly into single file as well. Very sensible stuff on the start so far, Lockie.
Good reaction there from Cameron Stubber. So he's pulled nice buffer over the rest of the GT4 cars as they head through Hill Corner on this opening lap. We take a look a bit further back in the pack to some of the action within the TCR and also the American Muscle classes, but a nice tidy start among our top 3 classes. Looking back to the sport class for the Mazda MX-5s, as they file into Hill Corner on this opening lap. And looks like a fairly sensible start from those drivers as well, as they just sort themselves into single file heading through Hill Corner. So a very, very sensible and conservative start for all of the drivers in all of our classes. And touch wood, no crash damage in the opening half of this first lap.
A little bit of side-by-side coming up towards Griffin's Bend, turn number 2. We talk about this very often. Very strong crown and camber to the road there. The inside line against the curb, definitely preferred. Tough to go around the outside. At the lead of the field, Cameron Stubber starting to build a little bit of a gap over the battling cars behind. That's probably going to be pretty important once you come down Conrod Straight in 6th gear in these cars. Long run there will definitely pick up a bunch of slipstream. Our TCR cars, though, they are, as we say, the most populous, a lot of them, and one of them's around in the dipper as well. And we have our first safety car, potentially, of the day there. Car around in the dipper. TCR cars, difficult on cold tyres. Lockie, you always talk about those rear tyres. We're still green.
And we are actually going to stay green for the time being, but that was one of the TCR cars running very wide coming out of Forest Elbow and glancing the wall as well, which, again, these cars, cold tyres, front-wheel drive, terminal understeer, you want to get on the power as hard and as early as you can to make sure you get an effective run onto Conrod Straight. Very easy to get trapped and just get onto that accelerator pedal a little bit too early, which looks like, unfortunately, has what's happened there. We've got a bit of a moment for one of the cars coming into the chase as well.
Stephen Grimer in 3rd place there. Trying to stick with our 2 TCR leaders here, James Foster and James Ruvolt. 2 names we said a lot last time. Those guys are once again off to a great start. Battle is thoroughly on for 2nd place, though, here, Nick, in the GT4 class. Paul Nichols there in our favourite Subaru liveried Porsche, defending the inside from Hugh McLaughlin, whose qualifying effort we saw. Again, that's that slipstream we mentioned being very, very important.
Yeah, exactly. They hold that gap heading up the hill very good. Up into Griffin's Bend.
Yeah, indeed. Tyres are going to start to be warming up for these guys, but it's not going to be helped by how cold the track is at sunrise. About as cold as you ever get on iRacing, 18 degrees Celsius. Probably gets quite a bit colder around this time of year in the mornings up in Bathurst, but that's still pretty cold for iRacing. Means the tyres are difficult initially, but then there'll be plenty of grip across the top of the mountain once those tyres are in their window before the track heats up a little.
As somebody who lived in Bathurst for 4 years, I can tell you just how cold it does get first thing in the morning at Bathurst, and it not only will get colder as the year progresses, but yeah, obviously, again, it's quite a long lap here at Mount Panorama, so it won't take too long for the drivers to generate tyre temperature. Cameron Stubber doing a magnificent job out in front. He's already built a sizable lead over his pursuers in Paul Nichols and Hugh McLaughlin.
I've been seeing Paul Nichols put up a little bit of a defence here. Hugh McLaughlin thinking it's a bit too early to go balls to the wall on a pass, but definitely looking here and there. We've seen some defence, some of it even into Forest Elbow as well. Behind them, and then behind the TCR cars, we have the American Muscle. That's very close as well. Aidan Luthwaite starting to build a little bit of a lead, but behind there, Peter Dodd, Michael Skurlock, all of those Mustangs in a line down Conrod Straight. Got plenty of V8 poke, but nowhere near the grip of a TCR car or a GT4.
Great to have the US-inspired muscle cars at Mount Panorama, though, and we have actually seen very similar cars to these racing at Mount Panorama in the production sports car category in the hands of David and Michael Stilwell. And with the US muscle cars, we've got a slow car.
We have a virtual safety car. Some drivers have reacted to it quite a bit faster than others, and that's what we saw going on with that checkup for the Mustangs into final corner of the lap. In fact, I see some TCR cars taking the option to jump into pit lane at this point. Virtual safety car, everyone doing just about pit lane speed out there right now.
Well, surely you wouldn't come into the pits unless you've got some sort of damage that you need to be addressed, because it's not really going to be any strategic advantage pitting this early in the race. It's not like you can fill up with fuel and get to the end from here. So interesting to see the reasoning behind that strategic decision, and interesting as well to see why we do have this virtual safety car situation at the moment.
Well, there's a couple TCR cars that have run into some strife, and I imagine that's likely what we have this for. I'm seeing Lachlan Okijo, Alex Perlia, Pat Gallo, and Perry Anastakis have all made pit stops already in TCR class. About to finish the virtual safety car. A bit of confusion here for the Mazda MX-5s, and I want to suggest there might be a blown engine there. Simon Mazzomo has an issue. It's got the car going. I don't know what happened there. He might have stalled it. Had to find the starter button for the Global MX-5 Cup car there. Not good for Mazzomo.
No, and the problem for him is having a look at him and where he's...
Huge in GT. One of them's gone over the wall there. That is not how you want to do it. So some troubles on the restart from our virtual safety car. Looking here, well, this is going to be a bit of a sickening incident for Edward Foster. Oh, huge wiggle up the top, nose into the wall, and then over the Coates Hire Bridge. It makes you sick to your stomach, probably to be in the driver's seat in that situation, but also to see that. Then Peter Kropp also, maybe a little helping hand from a full send car of James Foster.
So that was James Foster, the leader of the TCR class, getting caught up in a tag with Peter Kropp, who had obviously slowed up because he was involved in that massive shunt for the with the TCR car there of Foster, which we saw getting launched sky high and up over the Coates Hire sign there. So yeah, already massive dramas and massive damage for a couple of our GT4 contenders, and we're not even 10 minutes into the race yet.
Yeah, indeed. So hopefully drivers get into their rhythm, calm it down a little bit, because we want to see some great racing. We know that can happen at this circuit with all of the great cars we have on show here. It is just a little scruffy, a little bit of nerves initially. TCR class, one of those places we expect to see some great racing because they always race very closely in the slipstream. Carl Stevens is in the thick of it here, getting that slipstream off 2 drivers in front. Not quite shaking the drivers behind either. So Stevens in the middle of the pack here as we ride on board with him. What's his considerations at this point? The TCR car doesn't fuel especially quickly, so there might be some savings to be made, just saving a little bit of fuel in the pack early on.
And again, potentially that's a reason why a couple of them might have chosen to dive in under that very brief virtual safety car intervention that we had, just to top up with fuel, and it means they might be able to make a short pit stop a bit later on, but still a bit of a questionable decision if you ask me, because you wouldn't have burned a huge amount of fuel. They've only been on track for a couple of laps at that point.
Yeah, got to agree. From a strategy perspective, it only makes sense if it lets you cut out a little splash and dash at the end of the race, potentially. Because virtual safety car, you're not going to catch back up to the back of the field like you would under a full safety car. Drive-through penalty for Simon Mazzomo, and I believe that might have been speeding under the virtual safety car. So not a great start to Simon Mazzomo's Panorama Drivers Club career. Might have stalled the engine and then caught speeding under the virtual safety car. So he's dropped quite a way back there. Long race, you wouldn't count him out of getting back in the thick of it, but at the moment, not a good first 10 minutes.
Well, I think that sort of explains why he stopped. So when we saw Mazzomo earlier on, we saw that he was ahead of some of the American muscle car class cars. So I reckon he stopped to try and let them catch up, because he realised too late, obviously, that it was a virtual safety car, and he was trying to readdress the situation, but obviously wasn't able to do so, and hence the reason that he's been handed that drive-through penalty. as we see Peter Hunter, one of our TCR runners, coming in for a pit stop.
Hearing a couple more penalties for the same indiscretion coming through over the race controlled radio. So really got to have your wits about you early in a race like this, taking a look at our 4 different classes we have racing today. TCR, like we say, has the most number of entries, probably for good reason. A very popular class, kind of easy enough to get into, very difficult to master, and always very, very close racing as well. Talking about how close that is coming through the cutting, Carl Stevens just sizing up driver in front of Peter Matson.
Good to know as well, David, with the new rules for this edition of Panorama's Drivers Club, you can't just request the tow, so you need to get clearance from race control. So I do think that we'll see a lot more safety cars.
There we go. Look at this Carl Stevens round the outside, looking in all sorts of places on Peter Matson. Looks like he has a lot more speed through some of the corners, but of course, it's difficult to pass there, and in a straight line the cars are all very, very similar. Gotta wonder if any of the TCR cars maybe hit the limiter in the top of 6th gear down Conrod Straight as well. That would also put a little bit of a dampener on some of the passing opportunities.
One of the things that we have seen with the TCR cars is they do run quite short gear ratios, so I reckon there's every chance that they're going to be bouncing off the rev limiter by the time they head through the chase, that's for sure.
Sort of stalls out some of the progress there, and you've got to get a hell of a run to try and get alongside before the end of the straight, before the braking zone there. So we saw Carl Stevens having a look at Peter Matson, and now with some pressure from behind. American Muscle class, one of my favourites, Nick, and they are very close here. Jonathan Bain not going to have any troubles hitting the limiter in the Mustang. He's got plenty of gear there, and it's helping him get a bit closer towards the chase. Close enough for a move? He's still thinking about it, Nick.
Yeah, they pull really good. They pull really good speed down the back straight, like quite close to the TCR cars. But yeah, obviously, a fair bit heavier, and not having the aero package, they're a lot slower through the corners. But yes, so spectacular to watch.
Gear shifts are also a little bit quicker in the TCR car than they are with the proper H-gate style 5. It's actually 6 gears in the Mustang. You never use 6. It's a bit of a fuel economy gear. But yeah, normally 5 speeds for racing, 6th if you really, really got to get that economy. They're never short on gear. Pat Gallo, it's one of the interesting things with the different classes we have is sometimes if you're in one of the faster cars, have a little drama. You get put into racing against some of the slower cars, and Pat Gallo's just trying to get past some of those Mustangs, try and catch back up to his own class in the TCR. Again, we're going to see plenty of that in this race where the fast TCR cars can absolutely hang with the thick of the GT4 field. Harry Anastakis might have been another driver with penalty for speeding under virtual safety car. Lockie, I certainly heard quite a few drivers get called out for that.
Yeah, I reckon he probably was Perry Anastakis, because I think he might have made up a couple of spots under that virtual safety car, which is obviously a no-no, but...
Bit of giveaway, isn't it?
Yeah. Good to have Perry Anastakis stepping up to the TCR car for this edition of the Panorama Drivers Club. He was in the MX-5 last round, but he's running in the Wednesday night Turbo Touring Car Series as well, Perry Anastakis, so getting plenty of time in the TCR car at the moment.
Still hot in the American Muscle, Michael Skurlock right in behind. That would be Jonathan Bain and then Peter Dodd for second. Same two, couple of positions swapping in TCR. So I do feel like it has calmed down a little bit from that initial 10 minutes of the race, Nick. I mean, we're seeing the GT4 cars start to put some laps on MX5s, and that's going to be a little touchy, but it does seem like most of our drivers have warmed up their tyres, found their rhythm, and taken a couple deep breaths.
Yeah, so now the lower classes will need to not only try and race for what's in front of them, but also keep an eye on what's happening behind them. We just had one of the back markers of the MX5s come through, so those Porsches will be right up the front of those MX5s really soon.
And also, just having a look at the, sorry to cut you off there, David, but just having a look at some of the TCR lap times. James Foster, last time around, 2 minutes 17.6. I think it was actually the fastest driver on the racetrack. So at the moment, he's lapping more quickly than the Ford GT4 cars ahead of him.
That was one of the things we saw, is a good separation between the classes at the start of the race. Some gap between the GT4 cars and the TCR cars, and that lets the GT4 cars have a little bit of breathing room, get their tyres warmed up, get into their rhythm. But it will, as you say, be the case that some of those TCR cars, particularly, we've seen that from James Foster, who's very, very quick and consistent in the TCR car. We might start to catch some of those GT4s as we carry on. Plenty of great battles to keep our eyes across. There's some solid packs in TCR, and this great 4-car battle in American Muscle. Great one to watch too, as it's right at the pointy end of the class. Aiden Luthwaite's broken away from the rest of these guys, but second through to fifth are all together here. Got teammates in Bain and Daniel Stevens. And then not gonna miss Peter Dodd's livery there. He's again maybe paid the royalties to Jackson Pollock on that one. Michael Skurlock with them as well. Great place to be, I think, at the back of this train if you are maybe just a little bit off the pace of the guys in front, right along with them, pick up that slipstream in all the important places. Not a bad spot to be if you're Michael Skurlock, who's still in touch with this great pack of 4 in that class.
Well, number one, it means that you can probably learn a bit from the drivers that are ahead of you by following their racing lines. Number two, by staying in the slipstream, it means that you are going to be saving a bit of fuel, which might come in handy when it comes times to make your pit stop. And number three, of course, is that if there happens to be contact or an incident between the cars ahead, by just sitting back a little bit from them, it means that you can be in a good spot to capitalise and maybe make up a few positions.
It's on now as Daniel Stevens has a look at his teammate, and here Michael Skurlock's going to go down the inside of Peter Dodd pretty comprehensively. Done a great job there to grab that one. So from being single file, relatively calm, suddenly elbows are out. They've got some sport class cars to pass now. V8 does a great job with double the displacement and double the cylinders to get that clear before they reach Griffin's Bend. Speaking of those sport class cars, Lockie, here is our leader in that class, Cameron Dance. I do believe his first appearance in Panorama Drivers Club.
He is very experienced when it comes to iRacing though, and does some commentary for some events here on the SimSpeed TV network as well. So not too much of a surprise to see him leading the way in that class with a margin of 10 seconds over Simon Mazzomo, and we've had a crash up the top of the mountain, unfortunately, from one of the other Mazda MX-5s. That's Josh Maynard, who's gone into the fence at Reid Park.
Want to take back and get a modem simulation replay on that one. I think he's just tried to stay clear of the TCR cars coming through. 2 tyres on the grass there. No good at all, and the front falls off for Joshua Maynard. That is not a pretty looking Mazda.
And unfortunately for him, that was because he was being too polite, wasn't he? He was being too courteous to the faster TCR cars that were coming through behind. He did a really good job of getting out of the way, but in the end it was too good a job because he's wrecked his own race.
Yeah, indeed. Daniel Stevens, our eyes back on him. His headlights are off there, as they are for everyone. We've got far enough into sunrise that headlights not required. It's daytime running lights still on the TCR cars and the Ford Mustangs. in our American muscle class towards the chase. Long braking zone in a heavy car like this.
Just coming back to that point about the traffic management and giving way to faster cars, if you're in a slower class, and this is obviously a series that's targeted at gentlemen racers, it is courteous to get out of the way if you have the opportunity to do so, but at the end of the day, the onus is still on the faster cars to find a safe passage to get through. And I reckon that up the top of the mountain, if you're in one of the slower cars, you are probably better off holding onto your racing line, particularly through Reid Park, where it is such a committed part of the racetrack. And it's up to the faster cars probably just to be a little bit patient through that part of the circuit. There's certainly nothing to be gained by going so far out of your way to get out of the way of faster cars that you end up crashing because of it.
Yeah, that's it, Lockie. You really need to be predictable for the car to know and kind of guessing where you're going to go, with people pulling out to the side or coming off the racing line. It can be a real headache for some of the faster classes.
And as the fuel, so as the fuel burns off and the cars get light and the lap times continue to improve. So 2 minutes 14.8 that time around for our outright race leader, Cameron Stubber, which is by far and away the fastest lap that we've seen so far. It's more than a second quicker than the lap times that have been achieved by anybody else.
Yeah, stamping authority on the class right now, Cameron Stubber, as he goes past where I was for the start of the 12 hour earlier this year. Great spot up the top of the hill there.
You had a great spectator spot. That would have been a magical sight, David, to be standing up there at Reid Park and watching the cars come across the top of the mountain for the first time in the sunrise.
They brought the barbecue from the campsite to beside the track, cooked breakfast, watching racing cars. I think that's how I wish I could start every single day. And we do have that sunrise matched here for PDC7. You notice that at the very start of the race, headlights were on all of the cars. They were casting some light onto the track. Now we're getting those beautiful orange hues as the sun gets a little bit higher, peaks behind some of the eucalyptus there. So that's definitely one thing. I'm not sure that visibility was particularly poor at the start of this race. It did look like there was some light in the air, but certainly over a 2 hour race, we expect the visibility, the sun angle to change a little bit, but also it is a clear day. The sunlight is starting to hit the track. It will warm up a little bit over the next 2 hours. Still be a pretty cool morning. You know, we're looking at 7 a.m. in sim time, so finishing around about 9 a.m. will still be relatively cool as we see the race conditions there. I think everything's accurate except the current sim time on that, so the air temperature, track temperature, all right. So you see Grant Matterford having a bit of dramas with a big checkup through the dipper there. The TCR cars try and work their way past some of the sport class cars.
Yeah, it looks to be a bit of a problem with Andreas Cortez. He's been really well off the pace by over 15 seconds, so possibly either some damage or a technical issue.
The replay of that one coming over the hill and towards the dipper. Peter Matson was leading the little train, sees the MX-5 out in front. You very fully committed coming over the hill. They slow it. Oh, that is difficult. And then just not sure which way to go there after seeing that car go into the wall. Peter Matson does the sensible thing, slows it up, and everyone had their eyes on stalks there and no further contact was made, which is not always the case in that section of the racetrack, Lockie.
I do agree with you. It was very sensible driving there from Peter Matson just to anticipate what was happening with that MX-5 a bit further up the road and to make sure he slowed the car down, because as you do come over the skyline there, obviously it's blind crests and the car is very unsettled as well as you hit the brakes to slow the car down for the dipper. So not an easy thing to slow the car down and keep it under control getting down into that section of the racetrack. Let's give everybody an update on we'll come back to that point because Chris Polly in the TCR car has just had a big incident at Murray's Corner. He got on the grass as he turned into the corner. That unsettled the car and he'd gone sideways into the tyre wall.
bit of a science experiment there about which has more traction between the pavement and the grass, and I think science has come back and said the pavement does. That's a very easy mistake to do. You really want to be all the way to the white line there, opening up the corner, and once you get a little bit of the tyres on the grass, very easily done, very slippery out there. Side on impact there, sort of into the tyre barriers, and it looks like the car is moderately unharmed from that, but it would have been a significant fright, a bit of a scare there, Nick.
Yeah, I was just checking out that right-hand side of that car because he did hit it square on really hard, and yeah, there's barely a scratch on it, so hopefully it's only really cost him that 5-10 seconds or so, and hopefully it'll be just looking at Michael Sherlock's helmet there. Yeah, hopefully it's only a loss.
Oh, he's not going to have a smile on his face after that one, losing a position. Big drift in Griffin's Bend there, trying to defend that spot. Maybe he will have a smile on his face. I don't know him, but that is, yeah, that's an exciting way to take that corner, Lockie.
Well, this is continuing to be a ripper battle within the American muscle class between Jonathan Bain, Daniel Stevens, Peter Dodd, and Michael Skurlock. So Skurlock was about to overtake Daniel Stevens for what would have been third position in that class, but because he had that big sideways moment coming through Griffin's Bend, it has cost him to the tune of effectively 2 positions. As we see that Peter Matson is bringing the number 173 Audi TCR car into the pits. Just to come back to what I was going to say before, a bit of an update on where everything sits in terms of class positions and margins. So Cameron Stubber continues to lead the way in the GT4 class by 5.2 seconds over Hugh McLaughlin. So McLaughlin is still staying in touch. He's not that far behind Stubber at this stage. In the TCR class, it's James Foster with a margin of 4 seconds over James Ruwalt. So, in fact, again, that's actually come down to 3.3 seconds. So, again, the margin fairly close there. In the American muscle class, Hayden Luthwaite's got a big margin at 16.5 seconds over Jonathan Bain, but then, as we've seen, it's very close between positions 2, 3, 4, and 5 within that class. And then in the sports class, Cameron Dance leads by 7.9 seconds over Simon Mizzono, who's actually not done a bad job of recovering some of the time that he lost with that drive-through penalty a bit earlier on. And in fact, as I have a look at the lap times within that class, Simon Mizzono's lap times have been fairly comparable with Cameron Dance, so that is shaping up to be potentially a pretty good contest later on in this race as well.
Yep, Mez has got that car going again, tried to recover from the penalty, and don't know if he aspires to remain in the sport class or he'll move up into a higher division next round, but clean race from here on would probably suit him well for that. American Muscle still very exciting as your overall leader Cameron Stubber flashes the headlights as he starts to approach this battle, letting them know that he's coming along. 3 cars in a battle in front of you, not always what you want to see when you're racing along like this. And gets by 1 there, and he's got drivers in front still to get past, and this is not where you want to catch them, Nick.
Yeah, at Cameron Stubber not having a win in the GD4 class yet. Same with Hugh McLaughlin, so both of them will want to push pretty hard, but also want to kind of preserve themselves as they kind of pick their way through the field. The Porsche GD4 is very quick over the top compared to the older, heavier, slower Mustang. Just watching as he comes through the dipper now.
Yeah, certainly a more modern car, but there's not a whole heap of downforce on some of these GT4 machines, not even as much as the TCR cars that have their wide fender flares and their front splitters. Stubber, easy work of it all here in the end, given the inside line to Forrest Elbow. And he has still lost out a couple seconds to Hugh McLaughlin in second place in his class, who is still yet to catch those cars. I feel like if you're Cameron Stubber, you don't actually need a whole lot of seconds in hand. It's not worth pushing too hard, trying to build out a huge gap that could be, at some point, wiped away in an instant by a safety car. So McLaughlin now to navigate his way through some of our Mustang battles. Starting to look very busy in the final sector of the lap, Lock.
Yeah, we're getting to that stage of the race where the different classes are all starting to catch up to one another. And as you were saying before, it's always a bit of an awkward situation when you've got one of the outright cars catching up to cars that are in a slower class that are having their own battle, because they're often so preoccupied with their own race that they're not really thinking about faster cars that might be approaching them.
Got battle Paul Nichols and Ken Kropp, third and fourth in GT4 as they try to get past some TCR cars. Probably not how Paul Nichols would have wanted it. Couldn't track all the way out, couldn't carry the speed onto Mountain Straight here. Ken Kropp sits right into the slipstream behind coming up the hill. Not going to be close enough for a move, is he? No, I don't believe so. Dramas for Hugh McLaughlin, actually, in second place in class. That's elevated these guys up a spot. I'm not sure what has quite happened for Hugh McLaughlin there.
Well, funny you should say that, because I was actually just scrolling around the different cameras for the different cars, and Hugh McLaughlin's dropped out of proceedings altogether, so it could be a technical issue for him.
Yeah, bizarre one. A real shame, because it was looking good between first and second, and it was certainly someone who was in a position to challenge Cameron Stubber for the lead of the class. Not sure Nichols and Kropp are going to miss him quite so dearly. Now they've been elevated a spot in their battle. Both of them now standing on the podium, as it were, at the moment.
So this is close. It's only 0.4 of a second between Paul Nichols and Ken Kropp. So with the demise of Hugh McLaughlin, they now find themselves battling over what will be second in class and second outright in this race.
Yeah, certainly will be through the chase once again. Fuel tank goes quite a while on these Porsche Caymans, so as they skip pit entrance, we'll do that for quite a few more laps in this race, I would imagine. We are expecting just one pit stop from each class, barring any troubles that would necessitate repairs or some opportunistic strategy calls with a potential safety car or virtual safety car at some point. Is it going to be three wide up the mountain? American Muscle passing Sport. GT4 trying to pass both of them. Cleanly done in the end. A lot of these drivers with their heads on their shoulders, thinking self-preservation and the long game at this point in the race. Bit of a TCR battle, because there's always a bit of a TCR battle when you've got as many as we've got. Peter Hunter, Alex Perlier in this one as well. Grant Matterford there.
Just hearing from race control, it wasn't actually an internet issue. I think there was a race control issue.
I'm potentially seeing that as well with regard for Hugh McLaughlin, who we saw unfortunately drop out of second place in the GT4 class. It might have been a problem where a penalty meant for another driver has inadvertently been applied to Hugh McLaughlin. We'll wait for any official word or confirmation on that one. But certainly it does look like Hugh McLaughlin out of this race, which is a real shame, Lockie.
Well, a couple of the big players out. So we saw Edward Foster retiring with that spectacular crash at the top of the mountain earlier on. He's actually been the most successful driver in the GT4 class and currently sits atop the rankings. having scored a couple of race victories, so he's out of contention. Hugh McLaughlin, who was sitting third in the rankings, he's now out of the game as well. So this is a big opportunity for Cameron Stubber, who currently leads this race, to make up some spots in those all-important driver rankings.
Can't be certain how much weight each driver gives to that, whether they just take each race as it comes or they're worried about those rankings, but it would always be nice.
Yeah, it's good to see Cameron Stubber, a previous winner in the Kia, the TC1, that has now since been retired.
Watching a replay here of your American muscle leader coming into Griffin's Bend here, and that's quite a bit of opposite lock. Gives it plenty there, trying to catch the slide up over the curb.
Just
Virtual safety car on track once again, but we're going to keep with this replay. A little bit wide, a little bit slippery out there offline. A little dab of the brakes also needed to catch that one. Great work from Aidan Luthwaite to not throw away the great lead he'd built up. But Lockie, we are under virtual safety car once again. This isn't a slow-mo replay. This is live, full speed pictures. Everyone at safety car speed once again.
So, again, it'll be interesting to see why this virtual safety car has been deployed, and also to see if anybody decides to take this as an opportunity to come into the pits. And if anybody's got damage, it might be an opportune time to come in and get it rectified. And Grant Matterford looks like he's going to take exactly that option. I'll tell you what, if you're near the pit entry, then you might as well do it, because it's almost like a free pit stop while we're under this virtual safety car. And Alex Perlea in for what will be his second pit stop of the race as well.
And speaking of an opportune time under virtual safety car, it's a great opportune time for us to have a little word from some of the supporters of SimSpeed TV and Panorama Drivers Club.
You looking to stand out on track, give your sponsor some exposure, or create an eye-catching look for your team? You can't go past Worm Paints for high-quality, custom paint schemes for the iRacing software. Whether it's a complete original look or even recreating your real-life paint scheme in-game, get in touch with Worm Paints today. Worm Paints, quality custom liveries.
Well, side by side there, and at perfect time as the virtual safety car is coming to an end right now. Flashing a rain light on Cameron Stubber lets you know he's got the pit lane limiter engaged. Now he doesn't. Your GT4 leader getting back up to racing pace. Not sure how many drivers we saw actually jump into the pit lane underneath that one. Pat Gallo is partway down the pit lane right now, so is Lachlan Aquijo. I wonder, with an hour 40, if some of those TCR cars might be able to get to the end from here. Another question is, are their front tyres going to get to the end from here, Lockie?
An hour and 40 minutes, that'd be a big stretch for the fuel range of these cars, you would have to say. So I think it'd be a challenge. And like you say, front tyres is the other thing that tends to determine how far you can stretch out a stint as well. So you're going to come in and try and make it home from this point, I think you're pretty brave.
Lockie, you'd remember very, very well from the Enduro round of Circuit XL E-Series, which is on SimSpeed tonight again, that the tyre life can rapidly fall off on the TCR car.
Yes, and definitely when they come in, if they're planning just to do the single pit stop during this race, they'll definitely be changing tyres on the TCR cars. In fact, I think that pretty much all of the classes will execute a tyre change during their pit stop, given that it is such a long race and you don't want to be left out there as a sitting duck on worn tyres.
TCR battle right here, Nick, is Stephen Grimer, Kyle Stevens, and Adam Neal. And these guys have not pitted yet. They were not any of those drivers pitting under the virtual safety car. Who'd you rather be in this situation? Stephen Grimer leading the train, or Kyle Stevens or Adam Neal picking up the tow?
Yeah, definitely Adam right at the back, getting that sweet draft right up into Griffin's Bend. They have pretty heavy aero on these TCR cars, so it's good to see the provide some really close racing with the long straights.
Yeah, indeed, Kyle Stevens maybe trying to size up a move here. Exit of cutting. He's been very close. We've seen him a little aggressive earlier in this race. Wonder if he's playing the long game, thinking about strategy here. Quite a few of the TCR cars you can see with just a little bit of damage that they're nursing, that they might be able to get fixed when they make a pit stop, Lockie.
A lot of the damage might only be cosmetic as well. So for Kyle Stevens, for example, we've got a bit of front end damage, but it looks fairly minor, so probably nothing that's going to be impacting upon the performance of that car too severely.
Yep, certainly not. They're going to head down to Forest Elbow. Bit of sport class traffic to maybe check up Stephen Grimer a little bit. That's what Kyle Stevens would need if he was going to make that pass, because we have seen that following in the draft, they can hit the limiter and stall out, lose some of that momentum. Does seem every time we have a virtual safety car with our big grid that we've got, someone just messes up the procedures a little bit. So I have heard some penalties out there once again after that one. American Muscle, Dave Oliver, we saw his qualifying lap. Here he is looking for a pass into the chase. I think that's been very well executed in the end, Lockie.
Nice job there for Dave Oliver, who has some experience as a photographer for real-life motorsport events, and was one of the regular participants in these Panorama Drivers Club races as Adam Neal comes into the pits. Like you say as well, when there's a virtual safety car, there's various infringements that you can get penalised for if you're not careful, including not activating the pit lane speed limiter in time, or deactivating it too early, or overtaking cars while the virtual safety car conditions are in play. So drivers do need to keep their wits about them to make sure that they don't transgress any of those regulations and score themselves a penalty.
American Muscle, where the action's at the moment. Daniel Stevens and Peter Dodd. Interestingly, Jonathan Ben's been able to break away from these guys a little bit up into second place there. They'd been formation flying for the teammates there quite a solid chunk of this race. But now it's Stevens playing rear gunner a little bit further back down the road. Peter Dodd looking for how he might size this one up.
You just get the feeling this race within the American Muscle class is going to continue right through to the end. They've been pretty much inseparable, these cars, from second down to fourth all race long, and Jonathan Ben does have a bit of breathing space now, but every chance that the others will be able to reel him in very shortly as we ride on board with Peter Dodd heading down through the kink into the chase.
Yeah, closed a little bit in the slipstream, but not enough to make it a worry. Aidan Luthwaite still leading this class. He's got 15 seconds in hand before you go back towards the battles we had our eyes on. Battle in TCR as well, though.
Yeah, and I just held my breath there because as they headed down through the kink and into the braking zone for the chase, they came up on the MX-5 of Simon Mazzomo, who continues to hold down second place in the sport class, and it was just a slightly inconvenient moment in which they caught up to that car. We're at the stage of the race now where really it's the middle section of the race, so it's all about punching out the consistent lap times, making sure you don't collide with cars that are not in the same class as you are, and really just minimising the mistakes and keeping it smooth and consistent so that when we get to the final half hour or so of this race, when it'll become a bit more of a pure fight for track position, that you've got a car that's in good conditions to be able to play with.
Interesting seeing some green flag stops out of some of the TCR cars. We're headed to another virtual safety car right about now. Not sure what out on track has caused that one, but certainly easy to come a cropper here.
May have been Jake Oliver because he's back in the pits. Here we go. We're going to get motor simulation replay, and I caught a brief glimpse there of a car upside down coming out of Murray's corner. So here is Jake Oliver, and he's got Mustangs in front and he's got Mustangs behind. Now, he's got up on the curb there, getting into Murray's corner. He's done basically what Simona Di Silvestro did in the Bathurst 1000 back in 2017, where he's caught the exit ripple strip at Murray's corner, which has caused the car to fire hard left into the pit lane concrete wall. So a scary moment there for Jake Oliver.
Yep, seen the ground, seen the sky, and then seen the ground again. Of course, on its lid, that car's not gonna get back on its wheels by itself. So virtual safety car for that. We're about to get racing again, though. Virtual safety car ending right now. We get racing. I've seen a couple TCR cars take that as their opportunity, including your GT4 leader Cameron Stubber, who is on the lane. So that's maybe a little earlier than otherwise, but if there's no restriction on the fuel for a Cayman, they can make it to the end, having stopped now.
Well, the other thing for Cameron Stubber is that he's got a huge lead. He's more than a minute ahead of Paul Nichols now, who is the second place car in the GT4 class. So he can take this pit stop. He can come out still in the lead, I would have thought. And even if he does have to make another stop later on, it still won't hurt him too much. As we said, that Paul Nichols has dived into the pits as well.
Yeah, so a few drivers seeing that as maybe their opportunity to get some of that pit service done. James Foster carries on at the lead of the TCR class. He has been thoroughly rapid in that car here last round and previous times, so he carries on in the lead as second place pits and third and fourth pit as well.
That actually also brings James Foster to the actual overall lead as well. So showing how competitive the TCR cars are up against the GT4 Porsches.
Yes, to the point made there that the GT4 car's not with enough of a pace advantage to have built a free pit stop. And James Foster moves to the overall race lead as well. He was, I think, third on the overall podium last round, something like that. He was certainly up there on his speed and his consistency across the race distance. That was despite, I believe, I remember correctly, he got a little bit of help towards the wall at one point as well, and didn't seem to stop him.
Seeing some great onboard shots from Peter Dodd across the top of the mountain, across McPhillamy Park and down into the Essex.
Across Skyline in his pursuit of third place in class. Michael Skurlock not far behind them as well either, and Skurlock with one of our favourite helmets on lost a little bit of time to that drift that we caught, but still third, fourth and fifth in a close battle here in American Muscle. Only one car from American Muscle has pitted yet. Meanwhile, we've seen some pit stops from GT4 cars and the TCR cars, and Paul Nichols not looking good at all over Skyline. He's just made a pit stop. He would have been on cold tyres on his outlap here, Lockie.
Very, very easy to get unsettled heading over the Skyline. especially if you approach at the wrong angle. It's actually coming down into the dipper, and he's clouded the wall on driver's right heading down the hill.
Struggling with the backup camera there, as well as he's reversed hard into the wall on about 2 occasions there, trying to do the Austin Powers 12-point turn, get that facing forwards. A difficult place to go for a spin and try and recover it. So now, James Foster from the TCR lead is on pit lane. That car is solidly up on the air jacks. Fuel done, so he gets rolling again. Tyres definitely a must on your pit stop in the TCR class. Sport class giving us some intrigue here as well. Third place. I'm seeing... I'm looking at the wrong thing. Joshua Cavallaro in third there. Maybe pulling a... No, he's had an issue there. Slow lap last time, 3 minutes 24, nearly a full minute off the pace, if I see that correctly.
Front end of his car sporting a fair bit of damage as well.
Sport class has certainly been interesting there. We had Simon Mazzomo stall the engine and get a penalty, and still finds himself second place in class. So the entry-level class for drivers joining Panorama Drivers Club, and is down to just 9 seconds at the front of that sport class as well. So Mez has found some pace in the global Mazda MX-5 Cup car. Meanwhile, American Muscle 3-car fight continues. Peter Dodd in the middle of the sandwich, trying to hunt a position, but maybe worried about Skurlock behind as well.
Well, we saw that Skurlock was quite quick and was battling with Peter Dodd and Daniel Stevens for a position within the top 3 in that class a bit earlier on. As Simon Mazzomo's just had a crash. Now this is heading down out of the dipper. I've just picked that up on my vision from iRacing, but Simon Mazzomo, who was running second in the Mazda MX-5 class, facing the wrong way, heading down into the dipper. That was an interesting one. I heard the sound of crashing cars in the background, so I went to a different camera angle just in time to see Simon Mazzomo's Mazda MX-5 in the fence.
Take a look at that one towards the dipper. So you just push a little bit wide, finds the wall. Car got pretty unsettled at that drop at the dipper there, and Zomo facing the wrong way in traffic was quite a sizable hit as well. Can't let Mez get away without us showing a replay of that one. Third, fourth, and fifth get closer in American Muscle, and Skurlock's actually grabbed a position off Peter Dodd there as well. So Skurlock will definitely have the happy face helmet on with that one, and he's maybe close to grabbing another spot as well. Drama and TCR, Adam Neal on the grass. That looked like the exit of the chase to me.
So he's gone off to the left-hand side of the chase there. It'll be interesting to see exactly how that one happened.
Well, the replay will hold the answers. He's gone past Matson on the way in. Big drift. Start of the left-hander there, and not able to get it facing the correct way in a hurry there. Avoids the walls, which is fantastic to see, but quite an off-track excursion. I hope he got the permission slip signed on that one.
More pit stops coming up here. So Ira Felberg, who's involved in category management for the Turbo Touring Car Series that happens on Wednesday nights. Perry Anastakis coming back down pit lane as well. He's already made a couple of visits to pit lane during this race, including one for a penalty for a virtual safety car infringement.
It's interesting to note we've had only one pit stop from the whole class of American Muscle. Meanwhile, in TCR, we've seen every car on the lane at least once. And in the sport class, the only car we haven't seen on the lane is your leader, Cam Dance, and I believe that's just because he's had the cleanest race in that class at the minute. So different strategies across the different classes based on their fuel tank size, how they burn the fuel, and their tyre life. But certainly American Muscle, dodging the pit lane so far. I imagine some of these drivers are going to try and get to that halfway point so they can do the race on one stop.
Correct, so the halfway point is an hour and 10 minutes into the race.
So through the cutting, Daniel Stevens a little bit wide there. Skurlock behind him, Peter Dodd behind that. TCR tries to work its way through, and Skurlock very generously letting James Ruvolt, your second place TCR driver, through there, even at the expense of a little bit of time to himself. He's lost quite a few car lengths over the driver he's pursuing of Daniel Stevens. Stevens gives similar treatment to the TCR driver, and in the end, I think all is fair. Nick, different classes, different strategies, like I've mentioned. When are you anticipating we'll see the Ford Mustangs pit here? They maybe actually don't go through the tyres as fast in these cold temperatures. On a hot day, they might burn those rear tyres off, but I think, what are you anticipating from?
Yeah, you should see most, I reckon we'll hit the one-stop strategy. Really big fuel tank on the American Muscle class. Just kind of catching this replay here of Pat Gallo coming down into the chase with another slide, and also managing just to keep it off the wall. So he'll just lose a bit of a time penalty, but no damage.
Not the first driver to do that. Right as I talk about the Mustang strategy, Skurlock is on the lane. So we'll take a look at this replay, looking rearwards from Plonus. Whoa, it gets close right in front there. And then in the background is Pat Gallo off the circuit. But yeah, right as we start hypothesizing about that strategy, Skurlock on the lane in American Muscle, I think he's just stretching it to be able to get to the end from here, if I'm honest. My experience had been that an hour 12, an hour 15 was a challenge for those cars. TCR, though, on circuit, giving the excitement. Peter Matson getting that car facing the right way. You can't put the clutch in, give it some revs, and flick a front-wheel drive car around, though, Lockie.
No, you can't do a flick spin like what you can do in a rear-wheel drive car, so that'll be a bit of an awkward three-point turn that Peter Matson's going to have to do to get himself back into the action. As we pick
Here's
up
how he ended up there. For a second there might have been some help, but I think he's been driving too much in his mirrors, gone a bit offline, and unfortunately done that by himself, just succumbing to a bit of the pressure and distraction.
The saving grace for him there was that he managed to wash off most of the speed before he actually hit the wall, so hopefully for him there won't be too much damage there.
Alex Perlier with a long stop last time. He's made 2 stops as well to Grant Matterford, the third place runner's 1 short pit stop. So Perlier's definitely been faster out on track, but had a little bit too much time on the pit lane. He's trying to get that podium position back off Grant Matterford in this situation here. He's going to take the wider entry into Forest's Elbow. I think the pace advantage Perlier has, he's going to get this pass done eventually, but Matterford under no obligation to let him do so just because Perlier has made an extra pit stop.
And Alex Perlier is an example of a driver who's progressed through the Panorama Drivers Cup ranks, because he was racing in the sport class in the Mazda MX-5. He actually won that class in the last Panorama Drivers Cup event last month. And now he's made the progression up to the TCR class. So, again, that's one of the things that you can do with Panorama Drivers Club, because you do have 4 different classes and you've got cars with different performance levels, is you can start off in the Mazda MX-5, which I'm sure you would agree, David, is an excellent car for beginners on iRacing, because it does have quite predictable and forgiving handling, and then you can step up from there into cars that have got a bit more performance.
Yeah, back in my rookie days, the NC Mazda Cup car was the rookie car before we got the global Mazda Cup car, and it was very, very balanced. The newer ND MX-5, I think on the latest iRacing tyres, it's maybe a little more skittish, a little more tail happy than it used to be, but it is difficult to break the rear too loose with the amount of horsepower you have at your disposal. Cam Dance showing why he's at the front of that sport class, because that is one of the cleanest looking cars in class, and I think keeping it pointing in the correct direction, logging those laps and dodging pit lane for as long as he can, is paying dividends for the Kiwi.
Definitely, and he leads by 48.5 seconds over Simon Mazzomo, who we saw in trouble at the top of the mountain a bit earlier on. So all going well for Cameron Dance from here on in, and he should be headed to a fairly comfortable class victory. There is Simon Mazzomo, still sporting some front end and right hand side damage to his Mazda MX-5, and he's now going to bring that car into the pits.
Yep, 1 hour 18 to go. Quite a lot of our classes are going to be able to fuel and get to the end from here. I'm going to say definitely the case for the TCR cars if that's what they want to do. Definitely the case for the MX-5s as well at this point. So Zomo going to get some of that damage fixed. I think he is. Look, Cameron Stubber, your overall leader. Cayman can get to the end from here as well, but I'm pretty sure Stubber pitted when he did because the window was open to get to the end from there under the virtual safety car. Just wanted to cover it off, and he's doing well for himself there in the Exto Gaming car.
Yeah, much like with Cameron Dance, keeping your nose clean, you can see how consistent it is. Cameron Stubber doesn't have a scratch on his Porsche at all.
Fuel to the end. We think he's got 25 seconds in hand over Ken Kropp in second in class, who then has 35 seconds over Paul Nichols, and those are, at the moment, only 3 cars in the GT4 class running. So hey, keep your nose clean, and it's a podium. So that's definitely a reward for consistency.
Interestingly enough as well, Ken Kropp's pit stop was 9 seconds shorter, 9.5 seconds shorter than Cameron Stubber's pit stop. So I think that was a bit earlier in the race. I'll be interested to see if Ken Kropp can get all the way through to the checkered flag from here, or if in fact he'll need to come in for another splash of fuel a bit later on.
Car looks moderately pristine for Ken Kropp as well. Of course, drivers do have a fast repair available to them. That's very equivalent to being able to jump into a spare car at the pit stop, get everything fixed up to factory specifications in a jiffy, but you typically have a limited number of them. You can't go doing it at every pit stop. It's a bit of a get out of jail free card once, but after that you need to make sure you keep that car clean, otherwise it will take you a lot of time on pit road to get your car fixed after that. Don't mind the colours here for Ken Kropp. Orange, bit of black, bit of yellow. He's channeling some of those sunrise colours that we've had out on circuit. Speaking about that, track temperature has hardly budged, but the sun's definitely a little higher in the sky. We're just a bit too early in the morning to get some very hot track temperatures like we might have racing in the afternoon sun.
Well, if you remember the last Panorama Drivers Club race, it finished virtually in the dark. The drivers had to turn their headlights on when we got into the closing stages, and it was just about completely dark by the time the race finished.
It's been pretty clean out on track lately, and that's helping the fields spread out. We've had our great battles in TCR and American Muscle, and started to spread themselves out just a little bit. Still a battle or two in TCR, though. I'm seeing Ira Felberg and Harry Anastakis go at it. They're in, 11th and 12th in class at the minute. Harry Anastakis has gone and he's got his nose in front around the outside of the cutting, and that is a move down there as Ira Felberg sees that there's a lot of traffic and doesn't want a fender bender in that situation.
No, and Perry Anastakis is very experienced when it comes to racing in multi-class events in real life as well. We've seen him compete in multi-class endurance races like the Wakefield and the Winton 300 kilometre endurance races in a little Peugeot 205 GTI, which has become one of the iconic cars of the club racing scene in New South Wales. So when it comes to traffic management, speaking of traffic management, we've had a big incident coming down into the S's. Perry Anastakis had to take evasive action to avoid a Mazda MX-5 that had spun. And as Anastakis darted off the racing line to avoid that car, he actually glanced the wall on the left, and now there's more problems for Anastakis as he goes into the wall at Forest Elbow.
He winds the tape back, and fan favourite Andre Cortes, it's kind of been the start of that, unfortunately. He's coming around towards Skyline here, where we know it goes wrong for him, unfortunately. Across the hill, a little bit of damage on the car, but the suspension is all looking straight at this point. Glances the wall at the very top of the hill, very out of control, gives it a roll off the barrier, and you see how quickly Perry Anastakis was on the scene. Didn't have a whole lot of time to react to that one either, and we have our first full course safety car, real safety car of the day. This throws a huge spanner in the works, particularly the strategy for American Muscle, but particularly for everyone. Part of that's been triggered by a second incident here for Andre Cortes. Clearly, a lot of damage on that car. Suspension all over the place, comes down towards Forest Elbow. And so you just get up to more speed than the broken suspension can handle. Swerves across the track onto the grass. Finds the wall. That's not quite where Camp Shakedown is. That is another sickening incident, and brings out our first full course safety car of the day, Lockie.
So, yeah, very unfortunately, some cars that were running in fairly decent positions getting damaged. I feel a bit sorry for Perry Anastakis, because he was very much the innocent victim in that one. He had absolutely nowhere to go coming down into the S's with that car parked across the racetrack. The cars that were immediately behind him at the time, so I think it was one of the American Muscle cars and possibly another one of the TCR cars as well, did very well not to run into the back of Anastakis too. So some good evasive action from a couple of drivers up the top of the mountain. But yep, the safety car is now on the circuit, and this is really going to mix things up. We are pretty much at the halfway point of the race now. So anyone who hasn't done their pit stop yet, you would imagine, would take the opportunity to do so under this safety car situation.
Certainly, if you're already considering a stop soonish, now is, I think, the best opportunity you've ever had. You can save a little bit of time under a virtual safety car, but of course you lose hardly any under a full safety car, only the track position that you lose. Interesting, there's a couple trains out there on circuit, so about half of the field here has caught the pace car behind our leader Cameron Stubber. There's also that big pace discrepancy between the GT4 cars and the sport class cars. There's a couple places around the circuit where sport class cars trying to catch up to this train and a queue of faster cars behind them there. We're going to take this opportunity on SimSpeed TV and Hoon TV to give some love to the people and companies that support Panorama Drivers Club. Great opportunity under safety car here, and then we'll come back shortly. Pit lane is going to open at the end of this lap.
You looking to stand out on track, give your sponsor some exposure or create an eye-catching look for your team? You can't go past Worm Paints for high quality, custom paint schemes for the iRacing software. Whether it's a complete original look or even recreating your real-life paint scheme in-game, get in touch with Worm Paints today. Worm Paints, quality custom liveries. Back at Mount Panorama for Panorama Drivers Club 7 under safety car right now, and as we expected, quite a lot of drivers taking the opportunity to get some pit service done. The whole top 5 from our American muscle class, plus some other drivers there, Nick. Great opportunity if you were already thinking about a pit stop to get one done, as we're now in the second half of the race. Hey. Or maybe Lockie, you'd agree with that as well, I'm sure.
Yeah, I think we seem to have temporarily lost Nick, but yeah, I think, as I suggested, because we have now passed the halfway point of the race, and because we are under safety car conditions, prime opportunities to come in and take a pit stop if you need to do so. So what we should have now, David, is a corrected race order, and it will be Cameron Stubby in the race lead, but the margin has come right down. We've now got less than 10 seconds separating the top 3 cars, only 1.1 seconds separating first and second position in the GC4 class. The top 3 cars in the TCR class only separated by 4.8 seconds. So this has really compressed the battles in all of our classes pretty much, with the possible exception of the sport class, where with the way things have played out, there will be, I think, an entire lap separating first and second position.
Yeah, so with pit window maybe now closing. Not sure if we're going to see any waiver rounds at this point in the race. Not sure. But lights are still on the safety car, so we'll have at least one more lap there. We'll see how that goes when we get racing once again in the final hour of the race, Nick. We're in the second half. The safety car has brought everyone back together.
Yeah, it's brought King Crop right onto Cameron Stubber's rear bumper there. It's also given a bit of a free kick to James Rewalt on the back of James Foster. So yeah, we're going to see some really close racing as soon as that green flag flies.
It looks like Parry Anastakis on pit road right now. That front left has not been fixed, so this is going to be quite a long stop, I imagine, for Anastakis. Under his safety car, we have a pile-up at Forrest's elbow, Lockie. This is... that looks like we might have our American muscle leader in there as well.
Yeah, wow. So the driver who had been doing such a good job and leading the American muscle class pretty much from the outset has gone into the fence, and that'll be big damage to his car. It'll be interesting to see what caused that, but that's never a good thing to have a pile up under safety car conditions. Let's pick it up on the motor simulation replay.
Yeah, so here we are going through the dipper. I mean, it's possible the field checks up a little bit. There's a lot of blind corners in this section of the lap, but otherwise you'd have to imagine a mechanical problem. The rears just light up there, and then it's trying to get it facing the correct way around, grabbing reverse gear. Other drivers arrive on the scene, not sure what is going on there, and what has he done? Has he been coasting it on the clutch down the hill, and then when he's brought the left pedal out, it's spun up, locked up the rear tires? What else could explain that? You see he's at low speed, and then around it goes at a difficult place, even under safety car, to get the car pointing the right way. A lot of damage.
So what this has done is it's actually extended the safety car period by a lap. So, yep, we are still under the control of the Porsche 911 safety car. So the lights are out though, so we will be having a restart next time around. But what it does do is Aidan Luthwaite, and it gives him an opportunity to get back into the pits, get that damage repaired, come back onto the racetrack. He will be at the tail end of the field, but at least he'll still be on the lead lap. And we know, based on the fact that he's been leading the American muscle class all day, that he will have the pace to fight back to the front of the field. And he's still going to have the best part of an hour to do that once we go racing again. So, not ideal for Aidan Luthwaite, but he's not completely out of the contest just yet.
Yeah, indeed. We saw very, very clearly the effect of the fast repair, and he's been glad he saved that one up. You can burn through them accidentally, just getting tiny scuffs removed from the car if you're not careful. It's something you want to keep in your back pocket until you really, really need it. A couple other cars on pit road at this point as well. So the lights are off on the safety car. We're going to get racing at the end of this lap. It is looking like we might get a double file restart to get this race underway. I hope not, but we'll keep an eye on that one. We are in two rows, a little bit more NASCAR than endurance racing, I would think.
Yeah, I'm not sure about that. I would have thought that with all of the different classes that we've got, it might have been a little bit safer just to have a single file restart, and if possible to try and get the cars sorted out into their different classes so that you don't have faster cars mowing down slower cars when the race resumes. But anyway, we'll leave that up to our ever hard-working officials in race controls make the decisions on that one.
Yep, Pace Syndicate events for today. You do a great job with Panorama Drivers Club. It's always exciting racing. It's a great community as well for drivers who are just passionate about getting out and racing on the weekend here. Lights are out on the safety car, as I say, so we're headed towards a restart, and they are forming up in two rows. Nick, who's going to be the ones to watch on this restart?
Yeah, we'll be watching the middle of that TCR pack, like Alex Pelia. Paul Nichols is in between in one of the Porsches as well. So yeah, there's going to be a lot happening. It was great work by the American muscle cars to try and attempt to redress their position at Forest Elba. I know they tried to pull up to let some of the cars right themselves, but yeah, there's going to be a lot happening.
Just having a look as well, and I've noticed that both Paraganastakis and Aidan Luthwaite have been able to get back out of the pits as I suggested and joined back onto the tail end of the queue behind the safety car. So they're still on the lead lap and they're right in the game. Watch for both of them to be on a big charge forward once this race resumes.
Yep, so 59 minutes remaining on the clock. Safety car pulls into pit lane. Cameron Stubber, Ken Kropp at the front of the field as our flagman gets the green flag ready, waves it, and inside of the last hour, we're racing again, hoping for a clean restart here. Stubber has used that Porsche horsepower to go ahead and break on free of the rest of the field. Behind, though, everyone is going to need to have their eyes on stalks, be very, very careful as the classes are still mixed and mingled together in places.
Sorry, continue.
I just saw a TCR car just come out of Hell Corner slightly sideways, but it looks like they've straightened themselves up. What was that, Lockie?
I was just going to say, I'm watching Aidan Luthwaite a bit further back in the field, and he's made a very, very strong race start. He's already passed a few cars through Hell Corner and up Mountain Straight, so Aidan Luthwaite in the American muscle class on a big charge, and just huge congestion as they head up into the cutting. And I'd say a lot of respect and a lot of racing room shown between all of these drivers to ensure that they can make it through here without any contact or damage.
Yeah, 3 wide up the hill from Griffins towards the cutting is not what you expect to see. Everyone's done it cleanly, and through that, see Aidan Luthwaite has grabbed one spot away from Daniel Stevens. Had to fight for it though there, Nick.
Yeah, I was just watching Cameron Dance go up the hill getting swallowed up, so that would be a pretty nervous time for him, watching all those TCR and American muscle cars just fly past.
And incidentally, Simon Mazzomo, out of all of that safety car and pit stop sequence, managed to get himself back on the lead lap. So only 2 cars on the lead lap within the sport class, but they're only separated by 0.6 of a second. Simon Mazzomo putting the pressure on Cameron Dance.
Does look like Mazzomo is very close to falling off the lead lap here though, and I'm sure Dance, as much as he appreciates his teammate, would love that gloating factor to be able to win his class by a whole lap and ahead of his teammate. Not following directly behind in the slipstream though, that's interesting. I know that these guys are going to be chatting with each other.
Sorry, my apologies there, because according to timing, it actually had Dance ahead of Mazzomo, but only by 0.1 of a second. So the timing and the on-screen graphic there is not quite right, as we see Adam Neal coming to the pits. Now, this is a bit of a mistimed pit stop, because you would have thought that he would have tried to come in under the safety car. So I'm wondering if maybe he's sustained a bit of damage on this opening lap. As big lock up there. That was Dave Oliver, who's now fought his way up to be in 3rd position within the American muscle class.
And muscling their way, they are indeed. Very, very close stuff. 2x2 heading up the mountain. It's really brought this whole class together. One of the closest competitions we've got. I see 6 cars on the lead lap in this class. All of them on the road together here. Jonathan Bain in the lead. He's got Skurlock, Luthwaite, Oliver we saw putting a move there on Peter Dodd. Daniel Stevens in the picture as well. So Luthwaite back in the picture with all the cars he wants to pass right in front of him, but then also some traffic around as well.
He's not wasting any time, Aidan Luthwaite. Since the race start, he's passed car after car, and he's now right back up with the class leaders, albeit there are a couple of laps cars involved in the mix as well.
See that sun started below the horizon, now shining beautifully on Mount Panorama. Someone has skipped a bit of skyline there. Be very thankful that that's paved runoff these days and not gravel. Close moment for some of the TCR cars trying to work through as well.
That was Perry Anastakis, I think, who copped a bit of a tap heading down into the dipper. Got a bit sideways heading down the hill, was very lucky to just about hold on to that car by the looks of it. Battles going down into the chase as well. That's Kyle Stevens and Stephen Grimer, and also Grant Matterford, who are battling over positions 4, 5 and 6 within the TCR class.
Some of these guys are big gainers, particularly Stevens and Matterford, who started a bit deeper in the grid, now running in some good positions. But American Muscle, my goodness, Aiden Luthwaite fighting his way through the field, putting some moves on and a clinic in one lap. I think he's moved himself from 5th into the lead of his class. Swoops around the outside of some of the TCR cars there as well. Luthwaite wasting no time getting back in it.
So that move that he made on Jonathan Ben heading into the chase, that was for the lead of the class. So you're right, within less than 2 laps of the race start, he's come from the back of the pack to be back into the class lead. So an inspired drive from Aiden Luthwaite, that's for sure.
Nick, we've got a replay of how he's managed to do that. Other thing that confuses us a little bit, Justin Cotterill in front is soon to go another lap down on this one. This might be a 2-for-1 move here.
Yeah, seen him come through and really, really hard on the brakes in through the chase there. So really precision from Aiden Luthwaite.
Yeah, there we go. TCR, Peter Matson having a bit of a struggle there through the chase. Quite a few TCR cars have struggled with that change of direction across the crest at the apex of the chase there, finding it very slippery. That's the thing about the cool weather conditions we've got. When the car's working right, you have a lot of grip. Sometimes it can make it a little bit twitchy, a bit knife edge as the grip drops away.
So this is looking out the back of Paul Nichols' car, so he's involved in, like you say, a battle with a couple of TCR cars, including James Foster, our TCR race leader. James Ruwalt not far away, though.
No, very close first and second in TCR here, and this is going to be interesting for James Foster, seeing that he's got a GT4 car in front of him that's ostensibly for overall position. Is it good? Is it bad? He'll be picking up a slipstream off the GT4 car that should be faster in a straight line. He's absolutely sticking with and might be quicker across the top of the mountain, might find himself getting balked by the GT4 car in front, and might be preventing him from leaving James Ruwalt in his dust. Has its positives and its negatives, the situation that he's in.
I'll tell you what, you expect the GT4 car to be a bit quicker up and down the mountain, but I'll tell you what, there's not much in it, is there? James Foster able to stick right on the rear bumper of Paul Nichols as they head up mountain straight through Griffin's Bend, and now we get into the section of the circuit that you would say, if anything, is probably a bit more suited to the TCR car.
Yeah, it certainly would. Maybe it's not... The TCR's not quite as good putting the power down on the exit of the corners, but when it comes to flowing the speed through the sort of 4th gear corners across the top there, much, much stronger. Alex Perlier, unfortunately, that car's looking a little bit sick on pit road. It's up on the jacks, and this is his 3rd trip onto pit road, so he might not have a fast repair left for that one to fix it up. Our leaders, Foster and Ruwalt here, have only been down onto pit road 1 time so far in this race. This is, again, that sort of section of the track where you can see Foster is being held up here. He'd like to go a little bit faster over the crest, down the hill, Skyline, the S's, and towards Forest Elbow. But now he picks up the toe off the Porsche.
You could see there that Paul Nichols was a bit untidy heading down the hill as well. The back end of the car got a bit loose as he headed through the S's and the dipper, and that was what allowed Foster to close right in. But this is going to give James Ruwalt the incentive as well. So We've got two TCR cars battling for what will be the lead and the win within that class. And a GT4 car in the equation as well, as Foster goes to the inside of Nichols, heading down into Murray's corner. Ruwalt trying to work out whether or not he wants to follow him through. So in the end, I think Paul Nichols might just decide to get out of the way of both of the TCR cars and let them play on. And I think that's probably sensible driving there, you would have to say, from Paul Nichols, just to sidestep those two cars. After all, he hasn't actually given up any class position by letting the two TCR cars go through.
It's going to be a dangerous situation having those two cars battling behind you there if you didn't let them through. And Foster, I think, ran out of patience at the end of the chase there. He's now got to worry in his mirrors and defending a little bit in this battle against Ruwalt, Nick.
Yeah, I was just looking at their best lap times. So Paul Nichols has put in a faster best lap overall. But yeah, you can see the consistency of the two TCR cars. They're constantly putting in like mid 217s to low 218s.
Great consistency from our TCR lead. As you can see, the wheel work here from Ruwalt has to be moderately restrained with the front wheel drive car, but these guys are jumping across the curbs a little bit, using all of the track, and you can just kind of tell from the body language, both of these guys pushing it pretty hard. Each have their reasons. Foster would, I'm sure, love to break the toe to the driver behind, try and scamper away, build up a little bit of a lead. Ruwalt, of course, can't let that happen. Needs to be as close as he can at the exit of the elbow here to try and make a move, but you saw how skittish the rear of that car was coming down the hill through the curved and twisty braking zones, Lockie.
Tyre conservation will be the furthest thing, if I can spit that out, from the minds of both of these drivers at the moment. They're racing for the win. Still over 3/4 of an hour left, and Ruwalt really close as they head down into the braking zone for the chase. Pulls to the outside, gets it all wrong, gets onto the grass, and spins off into the gravel trap, and that, unfortunately, brings undone what was shaping up to be a great battle for the lead within the TCR class. Ruwalt got mega close to the back of Foster as they headed into the braking zone for the chase, but unfortunately, the two right-hand wheels out into the grass. You can see the instability of the car under brakes as well, and that's what caused him ultimately to rotate and go spinning off the racetrack altogether.
Yeah, it was good to see that second angle, because initially you might have thought maybe he got squeezed on the outside there, but from the second angle you really see that once again, the car not being very accepting of a change of direction under braking there as he tried to switch back from the inside to the outside, lost control of the rear of the car. That put him with a little bit of the tyres on the grass, and there was no getting the thing stopped once that was the case. But behind our leaders, it's on as well. Looking at Shane Witt here and Grant Matterford. Great cracking battle in TCR.
Unfortunately for James Ruwalt, that spin has dropped him all the way down to 6th position in the TCR class. Such was the closeness of the TCR cars after that safety car restart. So costly there for Ruwalt, that mistake.
You can see him though, he's only a couple of seconds behind these bunch of cars here, so if he can put down some consistent pace, he could clamber back down a third.
Certainly possible. We've got Grimer, Matterford and Witt in this great battle, and corner by corner you can see Ruwalt in the picture getting closer to maybe make this a 4-car scrap, which would be interesting to see for sure. Talked about the cars almost top out at the end of Conrod Straight because it's such a long straight. Bit downhill as well certainly helps pick up the speed in a tow. So that might be part of it for Ruwalt there, is if he was going to make the pass, he knew he needed to be a bit deeper on the brakes, and he might have been a little too ambitious with that. He's certainly on this train for 3rd place now, so no damage. He just takes that breather, gets his focus back, and he's in the fight once again.
Yeah, that's it with another 45 minutes to go. Definitely ample chance to climb back up onto a podium position.
He's going for pit entry, though, which is interesting. I think get to the end from here with this pit stop. Don't think he's got any damage. He's not the only driver on pit road. He follows in Kyle Stevens from the TCR class. So 50% fuel tank restriction for the TCR cars, making strategy as well as racecraft and pace something you need to possess for a good result in PDC.
Could be that he might have flat spotted those tyres after that spin at the chase as well, so an opportunity to bolt some new tyres on and get a more stable package for the closing stages of the race as we turn our attention back to the battle within the American muscle class. So Michael Skurlock up to second position now ahead of Jonathan Ben. Aidan Luthwaite, having charged his way back to the front of that class, has now opened up a 7.5 second lead at the head of the American muscle class.
Yeah, domination from Luthwaite. No one seems to be able to quite match that pace, but pace pretty equal from some of the guys behind, which has been making the racing interesting. TCR battle as well, though. And because of Kyle Stevens' pit stop, this has moved Matterford and Grimer et al. Up into second in their battle.
Oh, and Grimer going as close as you want to dare. In fact, I think he actually did make light contact with the wall there heading down through the dipper. He might have just managed to get away with that one. Certainly it doesn't seem to have cost him too much straight line performance on Conrod.
So Matterford, Grimer and Witt is the battle here. Into the chase, they all compress together, and we've seen bouncing across the curbs, rear can get skittish for these cars. Not a problem for Grimer. He gets a good exit. Matterford feels the need to defend a little bit, and from behind them, Shane Witt into pit lane. So quite a few of the TCR cars and some of the GT4s feeling the need to top up the tank to get to the end. Not quite as much concern for that in American Muscle, where they have the full fuel tank available to them. So everyone's saved a little bit of fuel under the virtual safety cars we've had, and of course the 2 or 3 laps we had with the full safety car. So I do believe our Mustangs here are going to get to the end. Can never be 100% confident though, and I'm always delighted to be proved wrong.
A lot of the TCR cars, I think with a bit of preservation, seeing some of the battles, might not be worth them to try and fight for track position when we've still got 40 minutes to go.
Certainly we've seen that some of them have dived for pit lane, some of them are still out and racing, like Matterford and Grimer here. So having seen Stevens, Witt and Ruvolt jump into the lane, I wonder if either of these guys will follow shortly.
I wonder if James Foster still has to make another pit stop as well.
I think he might. His last stop was 18 laps ago. Grimer is in the same boat. His last stop was 20 laps ago, but Matterford pitted 10 laps ago. So assume Matterford's carrying quite a bit more fuel at this point in time. James Foster in the lead and Stephen Grimer in third here. Might still require another stop. Betting the house on it, Grimer into the pit lane on this lap.
Well, if that's the case, if your data's accurate there, it could be that that Matterford's in a really good strategic position.
Okay, I guess I've got to hand over the house now. Good thing I don't own one and probably won't for a while. Oh, Adam Neal. That looks like the dipper. Quite a few drivers had troubles there today. He's in an awkward spot. He's not moving yet. He's just waiting for the break in the traffic. I think with recent enough after that safety car that there's definitely some gaps in the traffic as the field is packed up in places. Adam Neal, very, very patient, waiting for his green signal to enter the intersection there. Unfortunate, difficult position he's ended up in. Narrow part of the track, unsighted, and again, no way to flick spin these TCR cars.
I just learned something new as well. I just learned where the column is on the timing screen to tell you how many laps it has been since a driver's last pit stop. And you mentioned the data there, David, telling us how many laps the drivers have been on the track for since they were last in pit lane. So I was wondering where you got that information from. So I managed to work that out, where it comes from.
Picking up all the iRacing tips of the trade, you're going to be unstoppable soon. I might need to find a new line of work. Great battle in TCR here, Ruvolt and Stevens. Ruvolt, as I said, did take that pit stop, now trying to charge back through, and he might be in a good position, having taken his stop a little earlier than some of the others he's battling against, including Matterford and Grimer, who we had seen. Stevens, though, is in a similar boat. They pitted on the same lap, of course. Over the hill here, a bit more confident for Ruvolt. And Cameron Stubber from the lead, the GT4, back on the lane. This might be his stop to get to the end.
So this is interesting, isn't it? So the timing at which the safety car came out, we thought, given that it was more than halfway through the race, that everybody would be able to stop at that point and get home fairly comfortably, but that's proving not to be the case.
No, admit we were wrong here. I'd neglected the fuel tank restriction on the GT4 and TCR class to try and make them stop a little more frequently. They're two cars with a very significant fuel range, so it does make sense from a racing perspective to just have them stop a little more often. It does put Ken Kropp into the lead for the moment, because we do imagine he owes us a pit stop. He's got Cameron Stubber not far behind him regardless. So I'm going to work through a little bit of traffic, but at least for the minute, Ken Kropp cycling through into the overall race lead in GT4 as well.
We've actually had
2 laps ago. Looks like a shorter stop than Stubber. Is Kropp taking fuel and no tyres, and Stubber's on a new set?
Yeah, some great strategy from Ken Kropp. So he's gone exactly 10 seconds faster than Cameron Stubber, so which has pushed him out to the front.
Stubber trying to force his way through some of that traffic to get up towards Ken Kropp, catch him behind. He's got Peter Kropp, who is 2 laps off the overall lead there. Not quite in the racing picture. Well, he's in the broadcast picture, but more metaphorically, he's not in the racing picture against Stubber just in front of him.
Talking pictures, how great is that worm paints from Peter Kropp? That's some. I'm just trying to work out if that's tyre tracks or animal print down the side.
Hope it's leopard. Animal print's always in fashion. This is like a spy satellite taking the look from up above. The front of the Porsche Cayman for Peter Kropp there. I think it's just more of a geometric pattern, isn't it? Doesn't quite look organic.
Yeah, it is great.
Just sorry to interrupt. My timing system's not cooperating with me, but I'm just curious to know what was the difference in stint length, so the difference in the last time that they came into the pits for Cameron Stubber compared to Ken Kropp.
Kropp came in 2 laps earlier, made a 20-second stop, and then 2 laps later, Stubber came in the lane for a 30-second stop. So both of them are going to get to the end. Both of them have pitted recently. but I get this feeling like some drivers, including Ken Kropp, are maybe at some stops doing fuel only, no new tyres. So then Stubber comes out on a new set of tyres. They're a bit cold, takes him a lap or so to get into it, but then he'll have the pace advantage later on.
What it sets us up for, though, is a very interesting finish, doesn't it, between our two GT4 class leaders with just over half an hour to go.
What kind of story in TCR where Grant Matterford has stayed out? You said in response to my observations on the stints that Matterford was maybe carrying more fuel than some others, so he cycled through into the lead for the minute, might still need another pit stop. We saw a little bit of the pit stop from your former class leader, James Foster. And that car was all four tyres firmly on the pit lane, not up on the jacks, so his final stop might have also been fuel only, no tyres. Track's not as hot as Phillip Island was the other week for us, Lockie, but certainly going fuel, no tyres, an interesting strat in TCR unless Foster went only front tyres, which is of course a little bit quicker than taking all four.
But Mount Panorama tends to be a circuit that's not quite as tough on tyres as Phillip Island because you don't have quite as many high-speed corners to load those tyres up, but even so, still definitely a disadvantage not to take on a new set of tyres at the final pit stop. So the margin between Matterford and Foster is about 24 seconds. How long ago was Matterford's last pit stop?
14 laps ago, so that's at the kind of speeds they're doing, that's kind of close to 30 minutes ago. Would have been underneath that safety car we had, because about 30 minutes ago we just had that safety car. So Jay is treating you to the data on screen as well there.
So the question that I have then is, can Matterford get home from here, or does he need to come in for a splash and dash?
I think he will need to come.
Yeah.
Sorry,
agree with you.
Yeah, so with just over 30 minutes remaining, we've got roughly about 15 laps to go, and I know that they can only really go a little bit more than 20 laps, so yeah, he will need to come in. Hopefully, maybe he's waiting on another safety car to come through to kind of give him that space.
Let's not ignore the fact that he's the outright leader of the motor race at this point as well. He's ahead of all of the GT4 class cars. He's just over 2 seconds clear of Ken Kropp. Now, the other thing as well is we suggested that Ken Kropp may not have taken fresh tyres at his pit stop, whereas Cameron Stubber, we think, did put fresh tyres on. And last time around, Cameron Stubber was 0.6 of a second quicker than Ken Kropp, so that goes to show the pace advantage that you do get from the new set of tyres.
Ken Kropp really putting in some pace and taking a big chunk out of Matterford. It looks like he'll be able to catch him down all the way down into the chase.
Yeah, last lap around Kropp was 3 seconds faster, so he's certainly using the power advantage that the GT4 car has. Now he's going to sit nicely in the slipstream. He's got more straight line speed. He's got more horsepower. He's also got more gear. So I think he should be able to get the move done into the chase quite firmly here. But you see Cameron Stubber in the back of the picture there as well, who wants to come join this party. And like you say, he was about 0.6 faster on the previous lap. And if he's still warming those tyres up, so he pushes a little wide in the middle of the chase there, he might yet have more performance to get out of those tyres. We might see Kropp dropping off a little bit, fading a little bit as well. That difference between the two could definitely still swing in Cameron Stubber's favour.
It never ceases to amaze me. It doesn't matter what type of race it is. It doesn't matter whether it's production cars or supercars or GT cars. It doesn't matter whether it's in the real world or the virtual world. Mount Panorama has this knack of continually delivering us grandstand finishes, doesn't it, when it comes to these long distance races, and it's all shaping up for us very nicely once again this afternoon.
We could get some 12-volt kids ride-on toys here, and it would be cracking entertainment as well. So I don't think there's with some limitations, I don't think there's a wrong vehicle to bring to Mount Panorama.
there we see Cameron Stubber already flashing the lights, so he wants to make sure that he's showing Matterford that he's coming through, even though that they're actually fighting for both the outright lead.
Yeah, not shy, not backwards on coming forwards with the headlight flash here in TCR. Shane Witt getting passed relatively easily by James Ruvolt, who we saw made his pit stop not that long ago. It's fuel to get to the end here. Witt pitting 1 lap later than Ruvolt did. Now Ruvolt's back into third. Long way up the road from Ruvolt to Foster, though. So I think when we see a pit stop from Matterford, it's going to fall back into the familiar order in TCR of James Foster in the lead, James Ruvolt in second for the James TCR class.
That's assuming that Matterford has to do another pit stop, though, doesn't it? So
I'm going to refrain from betting my house on it this time, but I think from the napkin math I've done, would definitely suggest that Matterford needs another pit stop. Otherwise, he'd have to go an hour from the middle of the race to the end on half a tank of fuel. I'm very confident that a full tank of fuel can't do 2 hours in the TCR. So my reductive reasoning there would suggest that it's going to be just a little splash of fuel needed from Matterford. I think Witt might have pitted on the same lap as Matterford, then come in for about a 10-second splash of fuel.
So here's the gap between our 2 race leaders. You can see that it's coming down. Cameron Stubber's got the pace advantage at the moment, and he's now got Ken Crop in his gun sight. So we're into the final 28 minutes of this race. It's shaping up to be a pretty hot contest between these 2 Porsche pilots for what will be the outright race victory.
1.3 seconds faster on the last lap for Stubber, so he's found his pace. The tyres aren't getting any newer underneath Ken Crop either, so from being a couple tenths of a second, it's now more than a second a lap that Cameron Stubber has a pace advantage. You are going to start to see Ken Crop's worm paints livery look a little bit bigger from the front-facing camera of Stubber in the coming, I'd say, couple of corners the way it's going. Stubber can see his target, and he's showing why he qualified that car on pole, why he's led a lot of laps.
Oh.
Very precise.
Oh, we've just had one of the MX-5s hit the wall heading down through the dipper. I heard that in the back of my audio feed, and a bit of a nervous moment then, because it sounded like it was quite close to our race leader, Crop.
Luke Kimi, a bit too much brake, a bit too much steering angle coming over Skyline, gathers it up successfully. Then at the dipper, he's trying to stay right out of the way of your leaders. Well, he does a great job for Ken Crop, but then he's kind of a little bit in the way there as he Tony Hawk slides across the wall there with a bit of a grind. No harm done to Cameron Stubber, and not a whole lot of harm done to his momentum either, as he's, I would say now, picking up some of the slipstream down the long straights.
He's shown a serious turn of speed since coming into the pits and taking on that fresh set of tyres, Cameron Stubber, and he is absolutely flying at the moment. The margin now less than a second between first and second position.
Interesting from Crop, staying all the way to the right-hand side of the road until right before the braking zone, but I think it's too late to break that toe to Cameron Stubber just yet. The top of the mountain, though, yet more dramas for Adam Neal, facing the wrong way, and I think that car's gone onto the tow hook. Looks pretty pristine from the back, but there might be some damage on the front of the car for Adam Neal. Here's the replay, Nick. Let's see what happened.
Yeah, just seeing him go down across Skyline, down into McPhillamy Park. Oh, just dropped a wheel off the side. Very lucky that there were no cars. Oh,
Just as you say.
just collected by one of the MX-5s. The exact survey group MX5 of Joshua Cavello.
Yeah, not sure which way you pick to go in that situation. He's trying to go to the inside and the door kind of closes. Do you feel for Cavallaro in that situation? But that is a very, very steep curb at that point. There's plenty of places, plenty of cars that will ride over that curb and have some problems. Then Cavallaro, I think, has picked up a little bit of suspension damage from that. It comes to Forrest's elbow. And what happens here? Does he just run a little wide there? Chris Polly got her eyes on as well in the TCR car. Our director knows something happens, and I'm going to become enlightened at the same time you are, dear viewers. So having witnessed that excitement at the top of the mountain, Chris Polly gets a bit of grass down at the chase. So an exciting lap for Chris Polly.
An exciting lap for Josh Cavallaro as well, because that was another car that he had to try and avoid that was parked across his pathway. Here's the battle for the lead, so it's less than half a second of the margin now between first and second position. Ken Kropp and Cameron Stubber, with 23 minutes and 40 seconds remaining on the clock.
Yeah, Cameron Stubber again taking a lot of time out of Ken Kropp, so that around half a second that time. So it's not so much an issue of if but when. So as you can see, yeah, he's only less than half a second now, so he's going to be right up on that bumper of Ken Kropp.
Clear track in front of them for the minute, but that's not always going to be the case. Eventually, traffic might play a role in this, as it almost did earlier on. Focus from Cameron Stubber has him just closing this down to within a couple of car lengths at this point.
Yeah, knowing that
they start their descent.
Yeah, Cameron knowing that he has the pace and kind of seeing him chip away at Ken Kropp, he's going to be patient with this and not take too big of a risk. Both him and Ken haven't won a GT4 race yet, so yeah, it'd be great for one of them to get a run up on the board.
Fastest section of the racetrack. In the slipstream, Cameron Stubber is going to be into sixth gear, and with the headlight flash as well in trademark form into the chase. Defensive line from Ken Kropp, very defensive, very early. That might have been defending a bit of fresh air, as I believe Martin Brundle likes to say from time to time. Not sure it's helped him, but it's sure that he's not going to give up on trying to hold on to that lead, as Stubber has a bit of a look and might not be quite sure what's going on. Oh, huge wiggle there from Ken Kropp. Stubber's going to go around the outside, lots more momentum. He might have the lead now, Lockie.
Again, just shows you the advantage of the fresh tyres, and for Ken Kropp, because he was defending so early, he was driving off the racing line where there's less grip, and you could see it there heading into Murray's corner that there wasn't a lot of traction available on the exit of the corner, and in the end, Ken Kropp lost so much momentum that Cameron Stubber was able to take the position on the outside. So that ended up being a fairly straightforward move through to the race lead for Cameron Stubber, and with the advantage of the fresher tyres, he should be able to pull away from here.
Bit of excitement for the third place man in class and the last GT4 running. Paul Nichols, he's got the Subaru logos, but they are not helping him. World Rally Championship on the exit of the chase there. Not a lot of damage done, which is great to see. But Porsche do make an RGT version of some of their cars. This one isn't it.
No. No, it most certainly is not. Those Porsches definitely function at their best when all four wheels are on the racing surface, on tarmac.
And here's something I've learnt from driving them a bit. Very aggressive traction control means that once you're out on the grass like that, you have very little power, difficult to get the car rolling again, up to speed, get it back on the racetrack sometimes, because on a loose surface, the traction control goes a little bit over its head, a little bit above its pay grade, and trying to make sure that you don't spin up those rear wheels when probably on grass or gravel you need a little bit of slip to be putting any power down.
Great work again by Aiden Lithwaite.
17 seconds or so is the advantage he's built out ahead of everyone else in class. And you remember the safety car restart, he was down in 5th or 6th or so, fought his way up into the lead in very quick order. The pace hasn't dropped off from then either as he continues to scamper away in the lead of his class. And our understanding of the American muscle class is that all of them should be fueled to get to the end from here as well.
Yeah, with Aiden as well, so with his two-stop strategy, so he's really proving that taking on the tyres, the extra tyres and the extra fuel, he can really push it a little bit more out the track.
Not sure the two-stop strategy was how he entered the race with the strategy in mind. Can crop right up the back of Cameron Stubber as they try and work their way through some of this traffic. I think they're getting to the Mustangs for maybe the first or second time since that safety car restart. You remember Lithwaite had the big problem, needed the fast repair to get back in it, and what a great job he's done since then. Matterford, we thought, needed one more pit stop, and there it was, Lockie.
So there we go. So confirming that, yep, he did need to take that extra pit stop. And I'll tell you what, race leader Cameron Stubber had a bit of tough luck with some lapped traffic, and that allowed Ken Crop to stay right on his tail, and yet again coming down the hill, I think that Cameron Stubber might just get a bit awkwardly positioned up behind one of the Mustangs, and that's going to allow Ken Crop to close in once again. Stubber, does he go to the inside of Forest Elbow? Yes, he does, and good driving by that Mustang to go wide at the earliest possible opportunity, but these lapped cars are keeping Ken Crop right in the game for this race victory.
Slipstream also going to help him a bit as well. They get more traffic in front. Note about Grant Matterford, we saw his pit stop and he's come out immediately behind Shane Witt, so battles are going to continue right till the end here. Again, Stubber looking for a way through on a Mustang, not able to do so. The Mustang looking for a way across the grass, hop and a skip across there. Yeah, fascinating on several fronts in several of our classes here. Ken Crop refusing to let go of the leader, and also battles erupting in TCR as well.
How many times have we seen at the mountain, particularly in multi-class endurance races like the Bathurst 12-hour, races that have been won and lost by lapsed traffic?
So Crop, good run in the slipstream. Solid defensive line early from Stubber before he switches back across onto the natural racing line. Ken Crop's done a great job to stick with this battle, give Stubber plenty to think about all the way to the end of this race. Certainly, the traffic does become very critical, Lockie, when we've got four classes of very different characteristics and where they're fast around here.
Yeah, just up at... Oh, sorry, Lucky.
I think Stubber's going to be relieved that he's cleared the majority of that lapsed traffic and it's relatively clear road ahead for the next little while. Although, as I say that, I can see that there's a lapsed car just on the horizon, but hopefully for the sake of Stubber, he catches that car in a bit more of a convenient position on the racetrack. If you catch up to lapped cars on Conrod Straight or Mountain Straight or Pit Straight, it's not too bad. It's when you catch up to slower cars across the top of the mountain that they can really hurt you.
Stubber, I hope, has the hookup to get some new bulbs for the headlights of a Porsche Cayman. He has not been shy all race long of going the Bo Albert strategy on the headlight flashes. Just trying to make sure that everyone's aware he's coming and aware that he's going to try and make the move. He's cleared through the traffic relatively well. It's going to be a struggle at the moment for Crop to
What's the Bo Albert
stick.
strategy?
Burning the retinas of every driver around you. Those who know. So I think it's separated a little bit in our battle in GT4. There's still a TCR battle for third place, but Matterford came out right behind Shane Witt from the pit stops and has now dropped back a couple car lengths. I wonder if Witt has the pace and has Matterford covered. Certainly both of them about 10 seconds behind second place James Ruvold, who's then another 10 seconds behind the leader James Foster. So first and second got some comfortable margins for themselves. This battle for the final step of the TCR podium. It's where a lot of the excitement is in the TCR class. We had 16 cars take the start. 17th car in the TCR class is someone who was a bit silly. Yeah, indeed. I was gonna leave that one in there, Nick. I
was planning to wait for the 10-minute mark before, getting some laps in.
Yeah, you've come to the mountain today and accidentally brought your TCR car with you instead of coming to the commentary box. Easy mistake to make. Peter Matson 10th in class, and not the last car running in class, but he's had another little whoopsie towards the bottom of the S's. I was going to say 16 cars took the start, 12 are still running, and 10th place of them in TCR. It's Peter Matson here. Gets very wide, and that is, quite wide off the line there, and then in a difficult place to try and get it turned around. A camera operator there in the perfect position. Camera operator's had a bit too much coffee, though. That was a bit of a aggressive jerky motion on the cameras there. I've got one last word from our supporters before we bring you coverage on SimSpeed TV and Hoon TV all the way to the end of PDC 7. We'll see who can win out in some of the battles we've been watching. Back in a second.
You looking to stand out on track, give your sponsor some exposure, or create an eye-catching look for your team? You can't go past Worm Paints for high-quality, custom paint schemes for the iRacing software. Whether it's a complete original look or even recreating your real-life paint scheme in-game, get in touch with Worm Paints today. Worm Paints, quality custom liveries.
back at Mount Panorama for Panorama Drivers Club inside the final 10 minutes of this 2-hour, 20-minute race. Almost everyone is fueled to get to the end. They've made their pit stops. They've survived what's been a rather brutal race for some. And we're eagerly waiting to see how some of these battles shake out in the final couple of laps here. One of these battles appears to be Simon Mizomo fighting his teammate to stay on the lead lap. That's your leader, Cam Dance, there in the rear view mirrors in the sport class. Simon Mizomo, second in class, and on the lead lap by the tiniest of margins.
And these two MX-5s have been like this pretty much since the safety car restart, so try as he might, Cameron Dance has not been able to put a lap on the car of Simon Mizomo, which, if you're Simon Mizomo, you'll be a bit frustrated with that, because what it shows is that if you hadn't had some of those penalties and incidents earlier in the race, he had the pace to be able to fight Cameron Dance for the win. So the fact that he's been able to stay ahead of Cameron Dance on the racetrack shows that he would have had enough pace to potentially fight for victory within this class, but obviously he is almost a lap down.
Yeah, indeed. Two newcomers to the series, and I do hope we see them again in future. They've put on a good showing in the sport class today. Wonder what cars we might see them in future. We definitely see Cam Dance a bit in our coverage. Mizomo, I wonder what of the four classes suits him the best. But not doing bad in the sport class, that is for sure.
The rankings within this class are going to get shuffled around because a lot of the drivers who were previously at the top of the rankings have moved into different classes, such as Peter Kropp and Peter Dodd, and also Hugh McLaughlin. So expect a big shuffle up in the sport class rankings. Worth explaining how the ranking system works. So it's not like a regular championship where you have a season that's X number of rounds and the driver who scores the most points wins the championship. The way that it works in Panorama Drivers Club is that it's a ranking system. So it takes the results from the most recent 6 races and applies points based on those results. And it's a bit like tennis or golf world rankings is probably the best analogy. So the points from the races earlier on get taken off your results. So it's a ranking which shows how the drivers are performing over their most recent 6 races.
That was a great save by Cam Dance. A huge save coming out of the chase. Big slide on the grass and on the kitty litter.
Well, let's look again on board as he's right in behind his teammate. Yeah, they've moved that particular wall in the last couple of years, haven't they, Lockie? So I'm not sure you'd today have that space out there to save the car, but you still have it on iRacing per their laser scan data. So Cam Dance carries on. Maybe he's not going to drive quite so aggressively. He'll be a little more sheepish now.
The reason they moved that wall was to minimise the chances of drivers having a head-on impact with the wall coming under the bridge as you head down into Murray's Corner. You'll remember back, we've got Kyle Stevens. Speaking of in the wall, Kyle Stevens has gone into the wall, coming down into the dipper. But just to complete the point, you'll remember Bathurst 2006. Paul Radicic had a very nasty crash where he went head-on into that wall on the left-hand side of the road, exiting the chase. The car rolled and he actually ended up with some fractures as a result of that. As we have a look at the replay of Kyle Stevens getting out wide, doing what so many drivers have done over the years in both real life and virtual motorsport, hitting the wall on the outside and then ricocheting back across into the wall on the inside.
Yeah, easy to get in, just a bit too hot there, run out of time to get the car slowed, and find that the corners just keep tightening up as you go further down the hill there. So not the first person to come to grief in the dipper today. He is maybe a little more graceful than some, getting it pointed the correct way and getting racing again though. The TCR cars are built pretty strong, so he might just continue, but he was running in 5th at the time. I see he's actually on pit lane now, Kyle Stevens, so the damage more significant than it might have initially appeared. Tough to be on pit lane for some repairs in the final 5 minutes of the race though.
And highly frustrating as well to get so close to the end of the race. And then, yeah, to have an incident like that which damages your car and puts you out of the reckoning.
Cameron Stubber, your overall leader, is going to come around to the start-finish line now and have 2 laps remaining. They can keep that white flag on hand, but it's not going to be needed this particular time. Stubber comes around. We've got just under 4 minutes left on the clock, so that's going to be 2 more trips around the mountain. We've been blessed with some fantastic battles throughout the race today. Unfortunately, not any right now. But Cameron Stubber has successfully shook Ken Crop from his slipstream. So Stubber now using that superior speed and potentially fresher tyres. We didn't get confirmation on that one, but based on the pit stop times, I think it might have been fuel only, the Lightning McQueen strat from Ken Crop, and Stubber, it does appear correctly, deciding that each time he went onto pit lane, a fresh set of Michelin tyres was the way to go. Certainly, overall, it appears that that confidence, that extra grip has worked out for him.
Still been pretty close though. 6.5 seconds after more than 2 hours of racing is still a pretty tight margin. And well done to Ken Crop for making a fight of it, taking that gamble not to put fresh tyres on at the last pit stop, and then trying to hold on to the lead on worn tyres.
So getting closer to that 9 AM in session time, plenty of sunlight on the track, but it hasn't heated the surface up particularly much. We started at 18 degrees Celsius, it's now getting close to 21, so it's warmed just a fraction, but certainly not a hot track. That's probably helped the tyre life for a lot of our teams and drivers.
Great work by Cameron Stubber. He hasn't really had an incident. He's done 55 laps now and has kept his nose reasonably clean. Apart from a few bug splatters on the front, there doesn't really appear to be any damage. So 1 more lap to go now.
Indeed, that's what we're seeing, is that Cameron Stubber, your overall race leader, has started the final lap of the race. Does mean everyone else is going to be seeing that white flag as well. A couple of cars in front, he might put a lap down, that are going to get a little bit of a shock to find themselves on the final lap of the race. It's closed up a bit in American Muscle. The minute I said we're getting devoid of some battles, got Jonathan Ben leading this one. Looks like, is it Skurlock behind? It is indeed. So a battle for these guys to the checkered flag. Peter Dodd's just behind them as well. Looks like Ben is trying to break that draft. Skurlock not following him across to pick it up either. These guys are going to get 1 more lap as time's about to expire. So a battle on the final lap potentially for these Mustangs. Skurlock trying to size up Ben for the final spot on the podium in this class. A little bit of tyres on the grass in the braking zone there. Doesn't appear to have hurt the leading car of John Ben here. You wonder, is Skurlock just going to keep his powder dry until into the chase on the last lap? Plenty of races have been won here with a move on the final lap into the chase, Lockie.
Or even into Murray's corner. We've seen it happen in the past as well, haven't we? But here comes Cameron Stubber. Really, really impressive performance. Had to fight for it in the last stint there. Having the pit strategy to take on the fresh tyres, which saw him sacrifice track position, but the way that he was able to get back to the front of the field was really, really well done. So congratulations to Cameron Stubber, because he's going to pick up what will be his first race victory for the GT4 class here at Mount Panorama. And that will catapult him up the rankings for the Panorama Drivers Club.
So 2 hours, 20 minutes, and after 55 laps, more than that actually for Cameron Stubber, he takes the win, and he does appear very, very delighted with it indeed. Found that headlight flasher button once again. Ken Kropp put up a great fight. He grabs second place here in a thin GT4 field, where not all of them made it to the end, but a great job by Kropp. Here's your TCR leader, not that far down the road, James Foster. What can we say about the great performance he's put in the TCR class? No one has been able to match his pace.
Well, this is now 6 race victories in a row for James Foster. So in terms of the driver rankings for the Panorama Drivers Club, he's going to have a perfect score, 6 out of 6. So really, really well done for James Foster, and by a pretty comprehensive margin in the end as well.
Cam Dance is going to make it a photo finish with his teammate Simon Mazzomo. I was worried maybe Mazzomo had ran out of fuel there in the sport class, loitering around, but just doing what you often see in the Nürburgring 24 hours. Drivers waiting around for the photo finish, or waiting around to see the checkered flag. We've got this battle to the end here, but looks like Ben is in place to hold on to third in the American Muscle. Skurlock not close enough. Dodd not close enough behind that. Third, fourth, fifth to the checkered flag in American Muscle. Also saw quite a few of those cars pulling into the support paddock entrance after turn 1, like you would typically see. So they know their way to the paddock.
Always loved the form finishes there as well, and it was a 1-2 finish as well for Cameron Dance and Simon Mazzomo. So even though they were separated by almost a lap, they did still end up finishing in first and second position within Class S.
Well, we are to the point we can look at our results, I do believe. Anyone still yet to see the checkered flag? Well, we're waiting on those results to come through, but of course we know Cameron Stubber, a solid win there, 8 seconds ahead of Ken Kropp. Other car in class that made the finish, Paul Nichols and Peter Kropp, after a bit of time on the lane, I think actually might have gotten to the end. You can see there, got them sorted, Lockie, in the overall standings, which goes to show how strong James Foster and James Ruvolt were.
Indeed. So James Foster third outright and wins the TCR class. 6.3 seconds the final margin back to James Ruvolt, who finished up pretty quickly then. He was catching James Foster in that last stint. 8.4 seconds the final margin between Cameron Stubber and Ken Kropp in the outright GT4 class.
Look over the page shortly. As you can see, our top 10 in the overall standings there. Can tell you that 8th in TCR was Ira Felberg, ahead of Peter Matson. We looked your winner in American Muscle then, Aidan Luthwaite. Great job.
Really, really well done for Aidan Luthwaite tonight to come back from that crash under safety car conditions and fight his way back to the front of that class as quickly as he did. That was a really, really good job.
Peter Kropp there in the GT4 entry did get to the end, a couple laps down, unfortunately. And you see Dave Oliver with second in American Muscle, and then that battle we saw, Jonathan Bennett, Michael Skurlock, Peter Dodd, put on great action all race long, in fact, those guys. So good to see them racing hard, racing clean. A bit further down, we find our sport class winner, Cameron Dance, 1 lap ahead of his Fitstye teammate, Simon Mizomo. Joshua Cavallaro certainly had some dents on that red MX-5 at the end, but perseveres for third place, some laps ahead of the rest of the competition, just proving that persistence sometimes pays off there. Cycle through rest of your finishing order on the screen there.
Yeah, and now getting back into the realm of retirements as well. One of the big stories as far as retirements went Edward Foster, who came into the night at the head of the rankings for the GT4 class, but had that spectacular crash where he went somersaulting into midair at the top of the mountain, and that was his night done.
Yep, indeed. So with our drivers having completed their cool-down laps and some of them having dived straight back into the support paddock, we're going to be able to grab some of them for an interview. I think we'll start with our overall winner in Cameron Stubber in the Exto Gaming Porsche Cayman. Tell us about the strategy there, because it certainly looked like from the timing that Ken Kropp had some slightly shorter pit stops than you. Is that a difference in tyres there? What was the thinking?
Yeah, so that's exactly what it was. When we got down to that last pit stop, I was sort of discussing with Brad Rattu, who was spotting for me, whether we would take tyres or not. I sort of decided that if we had a near a 50-second gap, that we'd take the tyres as well, because I was thinking there's a decent chance we'll have another safety car or maybe a battle towards the end. And I decided I would prefer to have better tyres if I could. So it looks like, luckily, it worked out in the end.
Yeah, but great win for you. How's the GT4 car around the mountain here and around the traffic? Certainly, I've, in my experience, found a bit skittish on the cold tyres. There's no room for error at the top of the mountain here.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. You would have seen if you saw me coming out of the pits when I just swapped those tyres at the last stop. I nearly lost it on the first corner at the end of the straight. So yeah, it is really iffy on the first lap, but after that, I think it's just like anything. You just got to get used to it. Um, I think the new tyre model definitely has a lot to do with it, because when we had Bathurst a couple of weeks ago for the GT3s, I had the same problem with the Mercedes. Like the first lap and also like the out lap on qualifying, I had to really back off and be really careful. But after that, it was okay. So
Panorama Drivers Club runs a little different than some other series and some other championships with how it's structured and the events every month. What's brought you to PDC? What do you like about it?
the two things for me are the professionalism and the multi-class. So my favorite thing to do on iRacing is usually the VLN or the Nürburgring Endurance Series now. I'm not the fastest guy in a sprint race, but I like to play, just be consistent and keep a cool head and do a long race and sort of work the strategy while being decently quick as well. And, it's always interesting having to negotiate the traffic, and you never really know what's going to happen. So I like that aspect of it. But the thing with PDC as well is, it's got the same guys all the time. They've got a really great website. It's a regular thing. We all have our licenses, and you have to start at the bottom and have a clean race and keep coming back and coming back. So I like the aspect where it's like, if I wanted to go to a real track day or join like a real racing club with a real car, it would be a sort of a similar experience.
Well, going to congratulate you once again on a fantastic overall win here. Who would you like to thank while we've got you on SimSpeed TV and Hoon TV?
Obviously, a big shout out to Pace Syndicate Events for putting on the event, and everyone who turns up every month. Extra Gaming and all the boys, NatRad, and also obviously me mate mentor Luis Paulo Gallen's been helping me for a long time, so I'm sure some of his stuff's paid off. So thanks very much to him as well.
Pleasure to have you chat with us, share some of your insight with us. We're going to move on now to the second fastest class, TCR. I believe we've got our TCR winner with us here. Lockie Mansell, do the honours.
Yeah, well, congratulations to James Foster. James, that's your 6th race victory in a row in the TCR class in Panorama Drivers Club. How was it for you today?
Not 6 in a row, unfortunately, but 6 in total. I lost PDC 3.
Okay.
Yeah,
I stand corrected.
Nah, I liked yours better. Yeah, it was pretty good. The first stint was a lot about still conserving fuel. I really wanted to at least get over 20 laps, just because then for the rest of the race, if it went green, you were sort of in the clear to not have to conserve. But the virtual safety car sort of made that a bit easier, because it was still touch and go. Like, to do 20 laps and 20 laps would have been just barely doable under green. But I was trying to make sure the second half of the race I wasn't in any trouble. So that was the start, and then the middle stint was pretty straightforward until the safety car, and we closed everyone up. And yeah, I made a mistake. I don't know if the broadcast caught it, but going into the last corner, I just touched my right rear on the grass and went full opposite lock through the last corner and just hit the throttle and caught it. But it gave James Rewalt a run on me from there. He was right behind me, but he had a go going through the chase and went off. So from there, it was just a matter of bringing it home.
One of the things that we saw as well this afternoon was that I think it was because of a recent weight reduction from the TCR cars. They were quite closely matched in pace to the GT4 cars, and we saw at one stage there you were in a bit of a battle with, I think it was Paul Nichols in one of the GT4 cars. What did you notice from behind the wheel?
It was really just his car that was like a bit off the pace compared to the front two, and it was actually fortunate that I was behind him, even though I'd made an error to get there. But I was carrying a bit of damage from an incident early in the race with a GT4 accident, and I had a little bit less straight line speed, so I was just planning on sitting behind him. And because we were losing quite a bit of time across the top of the mountain, and it gave James Rewalt a chance to catch right up. So that's when I sort of just bit the bullet and overtook him. Unfortunately enough, he didn't get a run back on me on the straight, because they're very hard to pass after that, and you lose a bit of time across the top. So yeah,
We've seen that you've been one of the regular drivers who's competed in the Panorama Drivers Club races. What do you most enjoy about them?
the way the whole event's run, I think, is excellent. I like the professional side to it. Kyle Stevens does a great job. The race control do a great job. It's broadcast well by you guys. The driving standards are pretty good across the board, and yeah, I just think it's really good to have a good multi-class series with good diversity of cars. And yeah, it's my sort of racing. I like it's not too long, but it's also a decent length, and yeah, it's just really fun that you've got all those 4 classes and there's like 4 races going at once.
And just finally, no doubt there's some people in the background that you would like to give a shout out to.
Yeah, all the guys at Full Send Racing, Steen Ledger, and we've also got a new sponsor on board, Frozen Speed Motorsport Photography. So we thank them for supporting us, and we look forward to working with them in the future. So yeah, just to those guys, and hopefully we can have more success going forward. We're planning on doing Le Mans 24-hour as well together, so it should be good.
Good stuff. That'll be exciting, and we look forward to seeing you behind the wheel in that one. James, congratulations on your 6th race win in the Panorama Drivers Club.
Thanks, mate. Cheers, guys.
Well, good to speak with our TCR winner there. We've also got our American Muscle winner with us now, Aidan Luthwaite. It was not an easy race for him. He's going to chat with Nick Scarrigan.
Yeah, Aidan, well done, mate. You must be really pumped.
Yeah, very, very pumped with that, to be honest. My first race in the Panorama Drivers Club. I'm happy to come off with a win.
Yeah, that's excellent. That's yeah, you've done, because you're bronze class currently.
Yep. No, so just first race, yeah. So bronze class at the moment. I think I should move up to silver now at the moment, though.
Yeah, how'd you find your stop strategy? Because you've taken 2 stops compared to some of the other Mustangs.
Yeah, that's actually it's quite an interesting one actually. I did stop under the safety car as soon as the lane was open, obviously because the lane will be closed for the first lap. However, I had an incident on the safety car. I had, to put it simply, I had a hardware issue, and unfortunately caused me to lose control of the car and the safety car, and I had to come back in. Thankfully, I was able to make up the positions again, though.
Yeah, we did see that. Yeah, just down up at Forest Elbow.
Yeah, that's the one. Yeah.
Would you have some people that you'd like to thank?
Yeah, I'd like to thank everybody at Synergy Sim Racing. I'd like to thank my teammate as well for this race, Mr. Dave Oliver. I'd like to thank all of our sponsors as well, including JK Signs, Smith & Sons Renovations, BK Designs, DM Cinematography, Posies Mechanical, CSR Fabrications, and DGD Customs.
Awesome. All right. Thanks for that, Aiden. Cheers.
Yep, no worries. Thanks, lads.
Thanks for chatting with us, Aiden. And with a win to start it off, I imagine we're going to see you again in PDC. Well, we'll move on then to man who also won on debut here in PDC, Cam Dance of Fitzstye. Tell us, 4 classes out there, Cam. You were the slowest of the bunch, but a good race for you.
Yeah, it was quite busy being in the slower class and having to watch my mirrors every about 15 or so seconds with it, whether it be a TCR Mustang or a GT4 coming on by. But yeah, nevertheless, pretty happy to come away with that result, especially a 1-2 for the team. So yeah, really can't complain with that at all.
Locking it out by more than a lap over second place, your own teammate. It's good to win any race by a lap. Is it good to win by a lap over your teammate?
Well, like they say, the biggest competition is always going to be your teammate. So it's good to have a bit of bragging rights over Simon. But yeah, just the timing of the safety car, unfortunately, put Mez and everybody else on the back foot, unfortunately, and just gave me that extra advantage. So a little bit unfortunate for everybody else with the timing of the safety car. But yeah, I mean, one of those things about racing, you just either take what you get.
Tell us about the strategy in your class. And obviously, a lot of virtual safety cars early in the race. We had the full yellow at around about halfway, a little bit past halfway. I see you've made 2 stops to get to the end. The cold track, what's the tyre life like? What's the fuel consumption like? How did you have to approach it from a strategy sense?
Well, it was going to be only a 1 stop to get home, pretty much put fuel and put tyres on it, since they all happen at the same time. Since it's such a slow process, it was just going to be a matter of just 1 stopping to get home. But unfortunately, I had a moment at the dipper, pushing a little bit too hard, and then ended up cooking it and putting it in the wall. So I ended up having to use my fast repair there. But at the end of the day, still ended up coming away with the win. So can't really complain with making a slight error.
Well, successful race for you, your first time out. What cars might we see you racing in the future in Panorama Drivers Club? You going to stick with the MX-5 or American V8 take your fancy? Do you like a bit of front-wheel drive? What about GT4?
Yeah, not entirely sure what I might do next. Might have to see what Mez might want to do, but yeah, I'm probably looking towards getting into the GT4 cars, just because I've driven that car and it's actually not too bad of a thing to have a little bit of a fang around. But yeah, we'll see what happens at the next round, and if I'm in a front wheel drive or American Muscle, then I'm in that.
Well, we look forward to seeing you again in a month's time for PDC 8, and hopefully you have a little bit more of a fight on your hands.
Yeah, that's the case. I mean, didn't quite expect to have the dominant victory that we did at the end of the day, especially considering what practice times were. It was a little bit awkward having such a big gap. But yeah, I mean, hey, win's a win at the end of the day, so happily we'll come away with it, and bit of fun as well. So yeah, it was quite fun to end up racing in the series and be back for sure.
Cam, who do you need to thank? And if you don't say SimSpeed, you're fired.
Gotta of course thank the guys at Fitzstye Motorsports and our sponsors TechSense, Sensors, Renville Harnesses, Demon Tweaks, Fight Colorectal Cancer, and obviously you guys at SimSpeed for putting on an awesome broadcast. I tuned in and at the end of the race to listen to you and Lockie babbling away as well as Nick as well. So yeah, bit of a good broadcast, and yeah, looking forward to seeing what happens next time.
There we go. He's not fired.
Yeah, indeed. I don't think any of us are particularly disappointed about that. So we'll keep Cam around, and congratulations to him on that one. Fellas, another great race at Mount Panorama. I'll go to you first, Lockie. How do you wrap up your thoughts about today's race?
Yeah, well, I mean, the different strategies, and I think the fact that we had the fuel restriction on the different classes so that most of the cars had to make 2 pit stops to get through the race certainly mixed things up a bit, especially when we had some different tyre strategies coming into play towards the end of the race there. So Mount Panorama delivers again, I think, is how we sum it up.
Nick, I'll take closing thoughts from you as well.
Yeah, it looks to be consistency always seems to win. Yeah, a few of the front runners had a few accidents, but still managed. As long as you kept it off the wall, you could generally get back onto the black stuff and get those laps back in.
Well, there you have it. Mount Panorama is a challenge, but that's why we love it. That's why we flock here, and that's why we love to watch some of the racing from here. I've been David Haynes. I've had Lockie Mansell with me. I've had Nick Scaraju alongside me as well here. Tireless Jay Kennedy, although some of the wrinkles are starting to show, has been producing all race long, and we thank him so much. He does a great job on the cameras, on the production, the graphics package, and all of those things as well. Panorama Drivers Club continues with PDC 8 coming up next month. We hope you'll join us for that one. We hope the action is just as good as it's been this round, and we look forward to seeing you again soon.
This is fantastic. This is GT racing right now. He's got traction. He's got everything outside of both of them. Maloney! Oh, he's taking Anderson. Anderson's up to him.
Oh my God! Oh, big crash! Oh my goodness! Half the field's gonna get rolled.
Six very close. These guys I want to make their way through the field very quickly. Oh, there we go. Oh no! That's massive. This is it. This is over. I can't believe this. Oh my God.
God, what?